Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, I would like to briefly share with you some housekeeping items for your attention. So the symposium will be recorded and live streamed to the DESA Facebook account. So while the participants will have no access to the audio or video function, they will be able to interact via the chat button and ask their question through the Q&A function. You may interact with the audience via chat or join an online discussion board after the symposium for further engagement. Also, we would also like to request you to please have your audio on mute when you are not speaking to minimize the background noise and echo. Likewise, please do not forget to unmute when speaking. Yeah, if your PPTs will be played by you and DESA from our side, please just say next to proceed to the next slide. So I would like to invite my colleague to play a short video now.
I'm here to sound the alarm. The world must wake up.
Welcome everyone, and we will now begin the session 2 on monitoring and review of the progress of SDG implementation by strengthening digital data governance and leveraging open government data. Monitoring, following up, and review of the progress of SDG implementation could facilitate informed and data-driven decision-making. It can also provide insights and links between policy decisions and outcomes. To better review and address the existing challenges of SDG implementation and prioritize policy actions, effective institutional coordination and open government data are needed. It is also essential to enhance transparency, accountability, and stakeholder engagement in SDG implementation through open government data. Strengthening SDG tracking and monitoring is particularly important for effective, agile, and inclusive COVID-19 responses and building back better. Tracking and monitoring are also critical for understanding and addressing the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on the most marginalized and vulnerable groups by collecting and analyzing disaggregated data and ensuring leaving no one behind. Today, our session will provide an overview of the SDG implementation progress in the Asia and the Pacific region, and discuss how to strengthen tracking and monitoring of SDG implementation progress by introducing innovative country practices in promoting effective and inclusive SDG monitoring review. So this session will also share experience and lessons learned from member states that have conducted voluntary national reviews and the voluntary local reviews in 2000 and 2021, and those member states that are preparing for the VNRs in 2022. So now let me first invite Ms. Ricky Hansen, officer in charge of the Statistics Division, UN SCAP, to deliver her presentation. Ricky, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiping Yao, and a warm hello and good morning to all of you from me as well. I am very pleased to have the opportunity to speak at this symposium, where the topics of discussions are very close to my professional heart and very closely linked to what I do and what my office in SCAP is doing. What I will do in this presentation is to provide a bit of a basis for this session too, to give you all an overview of SDG progress in Asia and the Pacific based on a regional analysis that we have produced here at SCAP. Next slide, please. So what I will show you in the next couple of slides is all from the 5th regional SDG progress report, the Asia and the Pacific SDG progress report, which is produced every year by SCAP, and the specific basis for what I'm presenting is the report that was published earlier this year. It is a publication which is available online for all of you to have a closer look. And part of this report is produced in close collaboration with other UN agencies, which you see also listed here on the slide. And what I should say also at the starting point here is that the data we rely on for this progress analysis and report is mainly sourced from the global SDG database. So this is also data that all of you in principle have access to, and it is data that is reported from countries throughout the world, and for this report particularly Asia and the Pacific, of course. Next slide. So this is sort of the top level result of the progress analysis that we produce. This is what we call the snapshot view of SDG progress. What you see on this slide is all the 17 goals listed, and then you see a blue or red bar for each of the goals, and it shows how far we are in Asia and the Pacific overall to reach the goals. And what you can see is that although most of the bars are blue, which indicate progress, there is still a very long way to go in terms of achieving the SDGs. As a region, Asia and the Pacific is not on track to achieve any of the goals. And if you look at two of the goals, you'll note that the bar is red, which indicates regression. And that is, unfortunately, one of these is on climate action, which is very much talked about, and of course also in the up the high priority list of most countries and government administrations. You also see that life below water, the ocean goal, is also regressing. I want to just highlight the bars that you see here also, which indicates what we've called evidence strength. You'll note that some of the bars are shaded, and this means that we have a very weak basis in terms of data to assess progress, and that means that we do not consider that analysis for goals 5, 14 and 16 as robust as the other goals, simply because of a lack of data, and I'll say a little bit more about this further in the presentation. Next slide. If we zoom in on the goals and start looking at the different targets under each of the Sustainable Development Goals, you will see here that there is a bit of a mixed picture. What you see for each goal is a listing of the targets that belong to that goal, and then there is a color code. And sadly, you'll see that there are very few green dots on this overview. That for those targets that are green, it means that if current progress is continued, then we can expect to achieve that particular target by 2030. You'll see a lot of yellow shaded areas on this slide, and this is for all targets where we need to accelerate current progress to achieve target. And then you also see some red marked targets, and this is where the current trend needs to be reversed if we are to achieve the set target by 2030. And then there is a lot of gray on this overview, and again here we have an indication of targets where the data is simply not available to be able to say anything about where we are right now or where we can expect to be by 2030 with current progress. Can you click once next, please? Thank you. So again, zooming in on one goal here, it may be a little bit difficult to read for all of you what's on this slide, but I want to highlight that if we take a goal, goal 15, which is life on land, which is a goal that on the first slide I showed, our current snapshot shows that there is progress. We are just not on track in terms of achieving the target, in terms of achieving the goal. You will note that for a goal like this, and this goes for all goals, we can have a mix of targets that are on track, that needs to be accelerated, or where the trend is to be reversed, as well as the gray area in terms of not all targets being sufficiently backed by data to be assessed. So the overall goal progress does hide some details in terms of how we are faring on each of the targets under each of the goals. Next slide, please. This is another way of visualizing the results of a progress analysis. What you see here is again a list, this time of indicators with the numbers. Again, you can look at the details of this in the report that I showed you the front page earlier in this presentation. It's a little bit difficult to read. But what we've done here is to look at the indicators and normalize the progress gap so that we can compare indicator by indicator, although of course units differ a lot. But what we wanted to do with this presentation was also with this presentation of the data is to provide a tool that might facilitate prioritization of action vis-a-vis what a progress result analysis can give us. What you see here is that the longest bars represent indicators for which the gap is the greatest. Click next, please. Again, zooming in here, if we look at the red bars on this slide, this just means that it's indicators for which we are progressing, if we are regressing, and that is in terms of the size of the gaps, similar to what you also see in yellow on this slide. But for example, you'll see that the greatest gaps are to be found in indicators under goals 16, 14, and 8 here. And this might be indicators that planning ministries, for example, would want to have a closer look at and possibly prioritize for action. Next slide. I wanted to give you also an overview of the data availability status. I do work in a statistics division, and of course this is one of our main concerns here. And what you see here is an overview of that availability if we look over the past 4 years. And what we see here is that as of 2020, we have sufficient data for 112 of the indicators, but insufficient or no data for the rest of the indicators. So you see that there is an improving picture, but we are still far from there in terms of having the sufficient data to analyze progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is, of course, now we are into the last 9 years of the period of the SDGs. So there is very little time to rectify this, and this, of course, relates to the ability of national statistical systems to produce the necessary statistics to monitor progress. Next slide, please. Finally, just a few words on what can be done at the national level, because this is what I've shown you so far is an overview of progress for the whole Asia Pacific region. And we've developed a tool we call the National SDG Tracker. Next slide, please. And this National SDG Tracker is basically facilitating national institutions producing the same charts that I have just shown you over the past 3-4 slides here in terms of an SDG progress snapshot, overview at the target level, and gap analysis at the indicator level. So this tool allows each country to use the internationally available data, add indicators and data that you've decided and discussed at the national level, and calculate the progress overviews. And this, of course, is something that could function as a basis and an integral part, for example, of VNRs that we will be discussing and hearing more about in the rest of this session. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to some good discussions in this session. So Kipping, back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ricky. Thank you for giving us a very comprehensive and valuable presentation. So you guide us through about the progress of SDG implementation in the region. So by introducing the 5th Regional SDG Progress Report, and also you highlighted the SDG progress gap and also prioritization of action required. we also have a good glimpse of those kind of challenges in the data availability. So we are, although improving a little bit, but we still lots of challenges ahead. Yeah, and also thank you also for introducing SDG tracker, which is a very useful tool that ESCAP introduced to support the evidence-based driven VNRs by member states and providing SDG snapshots and dashboard. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure that our participants will have more questions. They can raise this question through the Q&A box. Yeah, thank you so much, Ricky. Thank you also for commitment and get up so early at 3 a.m. to deliver this presentation to us. We're so touched and by your commitment and support to us. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So now let me have the pleasure to invite Mr. Foba, Senior Planning Officer, Prospective Planning Division, Group's National Happiness Commission from Bhutan. Mr. Foba, you have the floor.
Very good morning from Bhutan to all the distinguished panelists and participants. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to present on our experience in terms of VNR. So Bhutan presented our VNR in this year's High-Level Political Forum 2021, and based on the theme that were provided in this HLPF. Next slide, please. Next. This is an outline of my presentation. I would like to highlight on the SDGs implementation in Bhutan's context, then our integrated monitoring approach that we have been doing, and talk a little bit on the data challenges and the way forward. Next, please. So SDG in Bhutan is mainstreamed in our national plans and programs. As most of you may be aware, Bhutan's development philosophy is guided by gross national happiness. So the ultimate aim of any plan or the programs in the country is to maximize gross national happiness. And there is a lot of similarities between gross national happiness and SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. It is very difficult to divide, or it's indivisible in nature in these two philosophy. So while we were formulating the current 5-year plan, which is 12 5-year plan, the GNH and the SDGs were the guiding documents or the guiding principles that we have followed during our plan formulation. Because in Bhutan, the GNH is operationalized through long-term and medium-term plan, mainly through our 5-year plan cycle. And currently we are in the 12 5-year plan, which will run from 2018 to 2023. So both SDGs and GNH are mainstream into the current 5-year plan. All the relevant SDG indicators, SDG targets and goals were mainstream into our 5-year plan. And this is how we are implementing the 12 5-year plan. We do not have a separate entity taking forward the SDG. Nevertheless, it is all being integrated into the national plans and programs, and my office or the National Planning Commission is the main overall coordinator of mainstreaming SDGs into the national plans and programs and monitoring how these SDGs are being undertaken by the respective sectors in the country. Next, please. So here I would briefly highlight the monitoring and supervision, the current system in Bhutan. The national monitoring and evaluation system has been there since the start of the modern plan period in 1961, 5 decades back. However, we have recently we have established national monitoring and evaluation system in 2006. As per that system, the cabinet or the government is the main apex body for the monitoring and evaluation or supervision. And at the central level, the Gross National Happiness Commission, or which is equivalent to the Planning Commission in other countries, is the main body who does monitoring and evaluation on a daily basis in collaboration with sectors. And in the sectors, we have their Policy and Planning Division, who is the nodal agency for monitoring and evaluation on SDGs, as well as other plans and programs. On an annual basis, this is being monitored through something called annual performance agreement that is signed between the relevant sectors, ministries, and the Prime Minister's office. So it is signed between ministers and the Prime Minister, and it is led by the Prime Minister's office under the division called Government Performance Management Division. And we have it is a real-time system or online system, and this has direct bearing on the individual work plan of all the individual civil servants. So individual civil servants' performance is based on the performance of the annual performance agreement, or the and this will have direct bearing on the performance or the evaluation of the individual civil servant in their promotion and in their incentives. So specifically for the 12 5-year plan, most of our SDGs were mainstreamed into the major programs like national flagship programs. For instance, we have health flagship program, education flagship program, waste flagship program, water flagship programs. All these are in line with the SDGs, and this way to expedite the progress. This way there have been monthly progress reporting to the Prime Minister's office, and there are a lot of initiatives like joint monitoring mechanism in collaboration with our development partners, etc. So, I will not elaborate. And outside the executive government, we have our Supreme Audit Institution also carries out audit annually and periodically. And similarly, Ministry of Finance also, they have a different monitoring tool, which is known as budget monitoring tool, where they also does both financial as well as physical progress monitoring. Next, please. Now, I would like to specifically talk a little bit on monitoring of SDGs and their indicators. Right after the endorsement of SDGs by our global leaders in 2015, we have carried out advocacy program on SDGs and how to mainstream SDGs into our national plans and programs. And we have also reviewed our data ecosystem to see our own capacity, and during 2016 to 17, an improvement of data and statistics management was identified as one of the important operational priority action in that review. And we have developed strategic plan to improve statistics in Bhutan, which run till 2023 from 2020, and this seeks to address most of the issues in terms of improving data governance and enabling factors. And Bhutan has also developed a dashboard to track SDG, which we call as DEWA, the dashboard to enhance well-being of all. And DEWA in our language, the national language, it means also peace and happiness. So it's an integrated dashboard to monitor SDGs, GNH, and the current 5-year plan or the development management in the country. So this is an integrated dashboard where we can see the snapshot of progress of all SDGs, GNH, and the 5-year plan at in one dashboard. This is it will also enable for us to get an up-to-date analysis of SDG data and status and the gaps and data availability. Next, please. So during our VNR, we also try to carry out an analysis on the data availability or the SDG indicators adoption in our country. So as can be seen from this graph, there is an improvement in terms of the indicator adoption of SDGs in our national plans and programs. For instance, there are 62 indicators, SDG indicators, so fully adopted as of 2018. However, it has increased to 93 indicators. In terms of percentage, from 25% to 38%, there is an improvement of indicators adoption of SDGs in Bhutan. And more important is the third bar, relevant but not adopted. Some of the SDG indicators were relevant to Bhutan, but during 2018, we were not able to adopt. So if you see that there is a decrease in terms of indicator adoption for relevant indicator, those we were not able to adopt in 2018. There were 107 indicators that were relevant to Bhutan, but at that point in time in 2018, we were not able to adopt those indicators due to various reasons, data availability, capacity, etc., and resources. However, when we assess through that same criteria in 2021 during our second VNR, the relevant indicators which we were not able to adopt has sharply decreased from 107 to 74%. So at the moment, 30% of the relevant indicators were not able to adopt in Bhutan. Next, please. So similarly, we looked into the availability of data both in 2018 and 2021. So data availability criteria were three broad criteria: available, partially available, and not available. So data availability, in terms of data which are available, the share has increased from 34% to 40%, and partially available decreased from 27 to 25%, meaning that some of the data which were partially available in 2018, now we were able to get the data, and not available data has decreased from 94 indicators to 86 indicators. Next, please. So this there is an improvement in terms of availability of data and in SDG indicators adoption comparing to two VNR, first and second VNR. However, as I have presented, there is a lot of still a lot to do in terms of indicator adoption as well as data availability. So the key challenges remains to overcome is the affordability, reliability, and access to internet. Due to poor internet availability, especially in the remote and rural areas, we were not able to get up-to-date data, or we are not able to get information as it is desired. And in terms of one of the challenges is that most of our data or the information we rely on the periodic surveys and census, and these most of these census and surveys were dependent on our development partner supports, and which has been decreasing over the years. And with the Bhutan going to graduate from the LDC category in 2023, so we are expecting some of our multilateral supports may decrease, and it will be challenging to conduct the periodic or regular census and surveys, because it's dependent on the donor so far. Currently, much of the data on the situation of women, children, and vulnerable groups, and on the nutrition and health are dated. Most of the data, the latest data on the women and children situation in Bhutan was from the Bhutan Living Standard Survey, which was conducted in 2017, and the latest data that we have is in 2017. And the next, because these surveys are carried out only after 5 years, the next data will be available only towards 2022. So next, and also there is a gap in climate related data. Next, please. So now since I have very limited time, I will briefly touch on the way forward. The main thing is that we are embarking on the strengthening capacities in terms of disaggregated data production, local level data production, and updated and utilization of the data. So this is still a challenge for us, and we have already initiated this. And COVID-19 pandemic has necessitated the collection and digitization of essential data with different vulnerability layers, geo-reference to enable support for the most vulnerable household. And building on this initiative, such data could be used for social protection programs beyond pandemic and response. And the movement restriction imposed by the pandemic has necessitated us to push pressure on digitization agenda, and as digital technologies became essential for the continued delivery of essential services. As Bhutan embarks towards rapid digital transformation, it has become crucial for Bhutan to ensure reliable mobile cellular services and international and domestic internet connectivity. And towards this end, one of the flagship is a digital Dukul flagship program, which is currently under implementation, which focus on the digitization of whole system and whole country, starting from the hardware to the software. And Bhutan has also initiated the establishment of third international internet gateway, and investment in this area of satellite emerging technology is being prioritized, with 4 engineers already sent abroad to study satellite development. Next. So this is my last slide. I would just like to thank all the organizers and distinguished participants for patiently listening to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Phuba, for your great presentation, which is very structured and comprehensive. You gave us a good introduction how you're mainstreaming the group's national happiness and SDG in the 12th five-year plan, and also improvement in conducting the monitoring evaluation through an integrated approach and a better institutional coordination since 2006. And also, you also give us a good introduction about how you improve the better data governance and SDG, providing SDG dashboard, increase of SDG indicators adoption, and also margin increase of the data availability. And also, you also mentioned some challenges, including like the access to internet, collecting of disaggregated data, climate-related data gaps, and the necessity of data digitization, which are quite common for many countries. So introduction, your presentation, very useful reference for other countries. Yeah, thank you so much. So now let me have the pleasure to invite Ms. Rosemary Adelon, Honor Secretary, National Economic and Development Authority, Philippines, to deliver her presentation. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning to our colleagues from the UNESCOP. And I'll be sharing my screen now. So we would like to share with you our experiences in strengthening this institutional coordination and also our multi-stakeholder partnership for the Agenda 2030. Now, as us in the Philippines, we have actually began this institutional coordination and partnership actually right from the start. And it's really to do with the lessons that we have learned from the MDG implementation. And this one actually we also presented when we presented our VNR back in 2016. We highlighted 5 lessons learned. One is that it really depends on, it really requires a sustained and consistent commitment across all stakeholders and going all the way, 15 years. And then the implementation should include a financing plan. And it should also include programs that will build resilience, because again, it's a 15-year development agenda. A lot of things can happen along the way, and we've just experienced one. There should be a clear assignment of responsibilities consistent with the governance structure. Here in the Philippines, many of the public services or services of government are actually devolved to the local government units, and therefore, even the monitoring and the accountability mechanism, meaning our data monitoring system, has to be able to exact that accountability consistent with the governance structure. So we began with the first building a constituency for the SDGs, and even as we were doing this, we were also trying to address other objectives. And this is really to look at the SDG indicators, find out which ones are relevant to us, which ones we have, etc. And so we did a lot of workshops. First with the Philippine Statistics Authority, then with several government agencies, the academe, civil society, and then of course we also involved the NGOs and the UN agencies. And the interest here was really to come up with an assessment of this, the initial list of the global SDG indicators. And this is actually what came out of that. In the global goals, we noted that there are 17 goals, 169 targets, and 231 indicators. And in the case of the Philippines at that time, yes, we had the 17 goals, 97 targets, and then 155 indicators. We also had a mapping of where this indicators, the data will be coming from. So we noted that 1/3 will be coming from the Philippine Statistics Authority, but so many others will be coming from different agencies in government. So this is actually the mapping of where we will be getting them, the percentage that will be coming from the different agencies and in government. And this alone tells you that we will really need to work together in order to come up with this coherent monitoring system for the SDGs. Another thing we did was to engage our Philippine Statistical Research and Training Institute to look at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 classification, or the indicators in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 classification. And we also made the determination of which ones of these we would like to put into the Tier 1. We would like to be included into those that are regularly collected statistics with an established methodology. And so they came up with the research necessary to come up with the definition and then the methodology and how it can be institutionalized in terms of the regular data collection. Another thing that we did in order to engage with our stakeholders is that to make sure that the SDGs are actually streamlined in our own national plans and programs. Now, this slide here has many things happening here, and that's for good reason. The graphics really has to do with our long-term aspirations going to 2040. That's the ambition, not in 2040, where we said that our aspiration is to be able to enjoy strongly rooted family and community life. We want a comfortable lifestyle, and we want to feel secure about the future. And so it will span all the way to 2040. And what we did was to make sure that the Sustainable Development Goals are actually mainstreamed in our Philippine Development Plan. So the first one is this, and as you can see, all of the 17 goals in the SDGs are actually integrated in the Philippine Development Plan. Now, this is actually also, I would say, a smart move, because what this means is that as we monitor the progress of our Philippine Development Plan, we are already monitoring our progress with respect to the SDGs. Next, we also engage with our legislative branches of government, both the lower house and the upper chamber. And this is what has happened because of all those coordinations and partnerships. For the Philippine Statistics Authority, they now have the SDG Watch, and this is actually available online. We managed to get legislation, and this is really to provide financing to fund our priority SDGs. That's the syntax law. And then by way of institutionalization, in the executive branch, we have the DBCC subcommittee on the SDGs. So that DBCC stands for Development Budget Coordination Committee. It's an interagency committee of the different of the cabinet, which is in charge of formulating the national budget. And so it's in charge of allocating the budgets for the different departments. So we managed to create a subcommittee on the SDGs under that DBCC. There is a Senate committee on the SDGs, and there's also a lower house committee on the SDGs. And then, very important, a DILG memorandum. This is the Department of Interior and Local Government memorandum to localize the PDP and also the SDG, the Philippine Development Plan and the SDGs. For our 2019 voluntary review, again, we made lots of consultations, making sure that it spans several stakeholders, including trade and labor unions, and including the children. And then we also made sure that we actually go to different venues. As you know, the Philippines is an archipelago. So we went to the 3 major island groups and then some more. So also for that VNR 2019, we actually constructed a website at the NEDA. So there's that sdg.neda.gov.ph. And so for the 2019 VNR, we actually made a call for inputs so that they can participate in providing inputs to our 2019 VNR. And this is what I mentioned, the memorandum circular for from the Department of Interior and Local Government. And so now we are preparing for 2022 VNR, focusing on these 5 goals. And again, we have looked at the checklist in the VNR, and we have determined that we have already managed to conform to each and every one of this, and mainly to do with the institutional arrangement. Just to share with you, I'll go back to that later. Just to share with you that this is now our the subcommittee, the structure of the subcommittee under the DBCC, the Development Budget Coordination Committee, that is actually to oversee the SDG implementation. So we have the subcommittee here directly under the DBCC. We have technical working groups spanning 40 WGs: economic, environment, social, peace and security, and governance. And then we will have a stakeholder chamber, and this is where we bring in the private sector. There's also that engagement with Congress. And so we have also identified what are those different outputs that will come out of this, or documentation actually that will come out of this partnership. And so we have actually institutionalized that partnership. And then just to share with you as well, that we also, the Congress has recently passed a law which is on the community-based monitoring system, the CBMS. And this CBMS will actually provide us with very disaggregated data, household level data, covering several of the goals. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then 13, 16, and 17. So that's a lot. 11 out of the 17 goals will actually be supported by data that is coming from the ground. And we are actually very excited about this. The data collection will start next year. Resources have already been allocated also by the DBCC subcommittee. So going forward, what we plan to do as well is to use futures thinking and scenario planning. And we think that there's again 2 objectives to this. One is really to come up with this SDG acceleration roadmap. We know that a number of our gains with respect to the SDGs have been pushed back by this COVID-19. But even more importantly is to bring the focus back to sustainable development. It's really very difficult to, we think it will be very difficult having to engage with our stakeholders, talking about the future when we have this existential threat confronting us right now. And so what we are planning to do is to use this mechanism of the futures thinking and scenario planning. And we intend to share our experience on this in our VNR for next year. And so that is my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. And I hope you have learned from our experience on stakeholder engagement and partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honor Secretary, for your insightful and very comprehensive presentation, and also many experience. I think is really valuable for other countries to take note and learn from you. And also you give a very good instruction about institutional framework and the coordination for the SDG monitoring evaluation. And also especially this kind of CBMS is very impressive. And also you have the checklist for the stakeholder engagement. And then you also highlight importance of the features thinking. We're also very impressed by the government of Philippines that you are advancing for implementation of SDG as an effective policy framework for building back better. It also coincides with the UN notion that the 23rd agenda could be a very important and useful guiding policy framework, for the building back better. Thank you so much, Honour Secretary. Yeah, thank you. So now let me have the honor to invite Ms. Mahajibi Chima, Deputy Chief, SDG Section, Minister of Planning, Development and Special Initiative from Pakistan. Ms. Chima, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mahajibi Chima, and I'm working in the SDG Section in Ministry of Planning. I think this is the most appropriate time for us to look back at our experience of making a VNR, because we are now going into presenting a second VNR in 2022. So in Pakistan, our Ministry of Planning is the focused custodian for executing, implementing, and monitoring all the SDGs. Next, please. Before going forward into the next VNR, what we did was to review at the process of our first VNR, which we presented in 2019. And there were some really interesting takeaways that we could take and move forward. The first thing that we came up with was that very interestingly and very importantly, we had already prepared some task force at both national and provincial levels. So while we were going into the VNR, and it was our first VNR, it was easy for us to take it as a national agenda and to approach at all regions. These task force, they turned out to be our main focus points. And whenever we used to have any kind of hurdles or challenges, we could go back to these task force. These task force had members from our National Assembly, from our Provincial Assembly. We had people from academia. Then we had people from technical backgrounds. So it really helped us to take forward the VNR. With that, we also had SDG support units, which were instituted at both federal and provincial level. I keep on saying federal and provincial because it was a very coordinated process, as we were getting all the data from our provinces. And we at the national level were just compiling it, sifting it, and going through it. So it helped us to have these units at every minute micro level, which helped us in vertical and horizontal coordination. Then we had separate technical working groups for all goals. We had technical groups for health, gender, climate change, peace and justice. So all these technical groups, they helped us maintain the quality of our VNR. They went through all the data that was coming in, they identified the gaps, and then they let us know which data can help us in giving a better presentation of where we stand. After getting all this data, what helped us in getting all the stakeholders on board was a national consultation. We went with the whole of government approach, and we took everyone in fold, and that was the time when we presented what we had gathered. And that national consultation helped us bringing all these things together. And they were, and that was not the culminating point. There were certain places where we had to go back to the drawing board and we had to start from scratch. But that national consultation gave us a feedback of all the regions where they were on the same page in achieving those SDGs, no matter where they stood at that time. Technology. That was something which we realized was lacking when we were presenting our first VNR. Most of our remote areas, they were doing everything manually. So we got the data, and then we tried incorporating technology. We tried bringing in internet in those areas at that time. We realized that there were certain areas where we could provide that facility. And while we were compiling this VNR, we realized that those areas can help us more if we provide them these facilities. So at that time, we instituted a structure, a technology structure. We provided them with laptops, we provided them with tabs, so that going forward, when we are doing this exercise again, we would be in a better position. Next, please. So now we are presenting our second VNR, and there are still lots of challenges that we are facing. First of all, after we went through a devolution exercise, and most of the goals, they have been devolved to the provinces. So they are the main custodians. And all of them have very diverse local contexts. For instance, remote area of Balochistan, it has a different context about gender than the national custodian sitting in the capital. Then we have Quetta. We have Peshawar, KPP. It's also a remote area. It also has a different perspective about health. So after the devolution, we have to bring all these perspectives together, bring them on one page, and report in a way that is presentable. There is unfortunately still a lack of synergies where people are understanding SDGs in a different way. So in order to build up those synergies, we have to again sensitize all the ministries, and we have to encourage them to engage with each other specifically for this task. We've also come across different varying capacities at national, provincial, and regional levels. There's a good understanding of SDGs. People are aware of SDGs in national custodian government, but there are times when there's a bit of confusion about what are the goals, what are the targets, what are the indicators, what are we reporting on. So this is a challenge that we are grappling with again. Data gaps. All of my colleagues from different countries have mentioned this. When we were presenting our first VNR, we were able to report around about 60 targets and indicators. Now we are in a position to report on 113 indicators, and we've come a long way. However, still there are data gaps. There are around about, out of those 113 indicators, there are like 23 indicators on which we do not have data. Our main custodian, Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, is the main custodian for our data, and they are trying their best to bridge these gaps. But there seems to be a sort of duplication efforts at the Provincial Bureau of Statistics as well. So we have to streamline that and deal with it in a better way. Next, please. At the regional level, at our local government level, there's an awareness about sustainable development goals in a very parochial and narrow way. And when they do have the data, there are lots of projects and policies which are going on. But in order to bring them with the lens of SDGs, there still needs to be a lot of sensitization to bring that data, bring that knowledge in a way which can be reported with the context of SDGs. Similarly, there's all the SDGs are interlinked, and these linkages are kind of feeding into one and the other. These interlinkages are seen to be missed while the data is being reported. So again, there's a bit of duplication. These duplication efforts kind of increase the efforts or increase the time to bring the VNR in a presentable way. And one of the most difficult thing is to translate what's going on at the project, intervention, and policy level, and then translate it into targets and indicators. And there have been lots of workshops which have been conducted. People are getting sensitized about how to interpret what's going on and how to present it in SDG context. But this is still an ongoing process. Coordination has been a bedrock of any kind of VNR that we've looked into or we're going through. There has been times when provincial stakeholders are on board, but at the regional level, the civil society is missing or the private sector has not been taken into loop. So limited stakeholder participation has kind of created a blind spot in areas where these private sector contributors, civil society is doing a lot. So this time we are hoping and we are working towards having more consultations. Next, please. Our basic takeaway is that we have to coordinate. And our major stakeholders have been our provincial governments, along with private sector, civil society, media, which was not that instrumental when we were doing our first VNR, but we realized that they have to be brought in. our international development partners, and specifically our parliamentarians. Because through our task force, we realized that parliamentarians can go to a very grassroots level. They can sensitize the local governments, and they can bring in the data that at the national level, at the macro level, we may miss. Next, please. Now, the solutions that we have found, and I'll just point this out. When we say innovative, we have to understand that certain innovations may not seem like innovations, but we have to understand where we are coming from. There are very small tweaks. When you make those tweaks, there have been great improvement. So we also have SDG dashboard at a national level, and then we have dashboards at various ministries. So over the past 2 years, data has been sifting through, and at like Ministry of Health, Ministry of Human Rights, they have their own data, and they have putting that data into a dashboard. It is becoming a little easier to bridge those data gaps. We are also revitalizing the civil registration and vital statistics program. So we are banking on it to have lots of data which was missing in the previous 2 years. We're also engaging local government representatives, which were not that instrumental in our previous exercise. And they are sharing their insights on various aspects of SDGs. And over the past 2 years, we have seen that they have been more sensitized, and we are getting lots of information from them. Again, sensitizing all the public officials so that they understand what is localization and how they're supposed to report it has been very important. And different workshops have helped us gain that insight into it. Next, please. Our existing database, for instance, we had a national socioeconomic registry to register all the people who were falling under the poverty line. That has become very instrumental in getting the data on our goal 1. And then we are still going with the whole of government approach. However, now we are giving the leadership to the ministry, and they are taking control of all the consultations while we guide them. And the multi-stakeholder engagement, that is still very important for us. We are engaging private sector, universities, and civil society. Next, please. So these are the areas which we are banking on getting information on, which was a bit missing in the previous VNR. And we are focusing on bringing these in and giving an edge to our next VNR. Next, please. So my key takeaway is that we have taken it as not as a task, but we have worked since 2019 till 2022 and we've taken it as a process. We have prepared for it throughout the year, and we have tried to bring in several very small innovations in it. We have consulted, we have disseminated the information, and we have got back again to presenting this VNR. And still we think that time is of the essence, and we have tried to start it at a time where we can present the VNR in a better way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chima, for your valuable presentation, which provided a comprehensive introduction on the lessons of VNR 2019 and also challenges of unprepared in 2022 VNR. You especially highlight the importance of coordination among different stakeholders. And also, you also suggest provide a good range of innovative solutions, including the SDG dashboard and engaging local government representatives. Yeah. It's important that you highlight important multi-stakeholder engagement for marginalized segments and also pressing needs of innovation and continued iterative efforts. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Chima. Yeah, so now it seems that we are 10 minutes left of our schedule. So I would like to urge our other remaining 2 speakers to check their schedule. Yeah. So now I'd like to invite Dr. Huang Dingxi, the Vice President and Secretary General, Guangzhou Urban Planning Association of China, to deliver his presentation on VNR. Dr. Huang was the leader of the technical team for preparing the VNR 2020 on SDGs. Yeah. Dr. Huang, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thanks for your introduction and efforts on coordinating such a fruitful session, Mr. Yao. And good morning, afternoon, and evening, distinguished UN officers and ministers, colleagues. On behalf of colleagues from Guangzhou, I would like to first extend our congratulations to the 50th anniversary of UNPOG and the success of this symposium. As a representative of planners from China, I strongly feel that this section theme, it plays a very important role for our practice for planning and developing cities and rural areas towards the green development paradigm, as well as building back better. Next, please. Next slide, please. Today, I will share with you our practice on the first VLR report of Guangzhou City and some thoughts of future steps of VLR to make it an effective tool for monitoring and evaluation of local development. Next, please. Also, next, please. Yes, we also, as other speakers have has discussed, that the VNR is a very important step of monitoring and evaluation process of the SDG implementation. But we also found that local institutions can also play a very important role. Next, please. Since New York City's efforts to publish their first SDG, VLR, in side events of high-level political forum 2018, practice of VLR has advancing very fast in growing numbers. Now over 200 cities around the globe is now working on VLR. Next, please. And UCLG and UN Habitat and other international organizations are launching VLR handbooks and other series of guidelines to support any local and regional government aiming to engage in the VLR process. And the European Union and Brookings Institute also find it very important to advance on VLR, namely as the next generation of urban planning. Next, please. During the year 2018, in the Guangzhou International Urban Innovation Award, New York's practice of VLR is nominated and got the final award. So Guangzhou learned about the experience of New York's VLR and it decided to work on Guangzhou's first VLR in the year 2020. Next, please. The VLR was jointly compliant by utilizing government departments and professional research institutes and social organizations, also with the help of the SDSN network China Hub that is under the SDG Institute under Tsinghua University. The comparison of VLR, they will utilize the public engagement work of the 2033-35 strategic planning of Guangzhou. It also combined the annual city health check and adapt the online-offline method to extensively understand public's awareness and urban development vision and their opinions on SDGs. More than 16,000 copies of questionnaire and over 4,000 opinions and suggestions were collected. We also work with industrial associations and chambers of commerce to mobilize encourage their intensify their focus to corporate social responsibility and interviews of surveys on the response of the enterprise prices to implement SDGs. Next. And taking the VLR as an opportunity, Guangzhou further implemented one of the important principles of leaving no one behind on the compilation of the city's 2035 strategic planning and implementation of the urban development footprint. And as we make a correlation between the 6 urban development strategies and the 17 SDGs, that said that the 6th urban development strategy fixing the SDGs very well, which is also have details of our VLR reports. Next, please. And we selected 5 priority review targets, that is SDG 4 on education, SDG 6 on water, SDG 9 on industrial innovation and infrastructure, SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities, and SDG 15 on life on land for the first version of our VLR. Next, please. Under each prioritized review goals, we have key data that's on the left of the screen, and a lot of descriptive review focusing on each sub indicators and sub second category goals of the each SDG. And we have a lot of case boxes that is went into detail of how the local communities and local enterprises think about of their contribution to the SDGs. Next, please. As details of our VLR report is published on the DESA website, you can see other details. Now I will look at 3 future points that I think the future steps of the VLR can contribute more to implement SDGs. Firstly, advancing the local implementation, fostering the local implementation forces of SDGs is very important. Achieving let's take the example of SDG 11, achieving sustainable urban and rural community development is very important for SDG 11. But for example, if we enhance the quality of urban and rural communities, it not only contributes to living conditions, but also links to changing lifestyles towards healthy and green hobbies. That can also contribute a lot for SDG 3, SDG 7, and SDG 13. And VLR should not only, as most of the cities do now, exchange their best practice knowledges, but also need to identify aspects in need of joint efforts. For example, through the VLR, we found the need of people's having outdoor walking routes. And then Guangzhou City, we joined the departments in charge of biodiversity, and also the climate and also the forestry. We built up some greenway and also the cloudways for healthy lifestyles. Next, please. And as a lot of speakers have mentioned, more efficient data governance to support the quantitative modeling is still a very difficult issue. As the UN's handbook has already listed various different indicator systems that is published, and also the UN Habitat also published this kind of urban monitoring frameworks with 4 plus 5 per dimensions. There are 10 to 20 dimensions. We are having a lot of difficulties to collect and feeding data into this kind of data indicators. For the UN Habitat's urban monitoring frameworks, we are now working with Shanghai to see whether the data from larger city like Shanghai can fit into this kind of framework of monitoring. But even Shanghai can do this kind of monitoring framework. How to use this kind of framework into other cities with more difficulty of data infrastructure? That still is a problem. And the next, please, and the final. The next, please. And we for one forward, please. Sorry. Forward, please. Okay. And for example, in the we have 3 layers of urban data collection. That one is from the ministerial governments, and second, we take part in these kind of ICT firms working on municipal facilities. And the third, we rely quite a lot on the voluntary data from the public, such as we have public satisfactory surveys, and also we have this kind of mobile apps letting people to photo and upload what their opinions and what they think that which can be approved. And finally, we think using this kind of circle of reviewing and evaluation of the SDGs into the development circle is important. So for example, UN Habitat put forward this kind of 4-year circle of how from VLR to planning, to project investment design, and back into VLR. And in China, with a dynamic city body check year by year to work out what are the shortcomings and what need to be maintained immediately. In every 5 years, we have a comprehensive evaluation and making these results of evaluation as clues for the 5-year plan and investment projects. That's all I would need to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wang, for introducing the experience of VAR of Guangzhou in 2020, and also how the city is linking its overall development strategy with SDGs with a guiding principle of leaving no one behind. Your introduction about the priority review goals and a local implementation of SDGs and effective data governance for monitoring SDGs, and also how you integrating the review and evaluation of SDGs into the development cycle, so-called, are very kind of impressive. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Huang. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, let me have the pleasure to invite Dr. Hina Yang, Senior Researcher, Carbon Neutrality Planning Team, Korea Water Resources Corporation of the Republic of Korea, to deliver her presentation. Since 1967, K-Water has played a key role in Korean economic growth and has made great achievements in securing clean water for all, which relate to the SDG 6, and also addressing climate risks by providing clean energy relate to SDG 13 by comprehensively developing and managing water resources. K-Water has implemented the integrated water resource management by integrating different data sources. I'm sure the experience of K-Water in supporting the progress of SDG implementation would be valuable for other countries. Yeah, Ms. Hina Yang, you have the floor.
Thank you for introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm Hinaya from Korea Water Resource Corporation. Before starting my presentation, I'm really appreciated to have presenting today at this symposium. Today, I'm going to talk about climate crisis, especially water management and carbon neutrality. Next, please. First, I'm going to talk about climate crisis a little bit, and then I'm going to introduce our working about the water management and the carbon neutral action plan. Next, please. And also next, please. Climate crisis. The global average temperature increased by 1.1 compared to pre-industrial period. We face an ecocide, and every year the sea level rises of 4.8 millimeters. This year we have a big wildfire in Turkey. Also, drought and flood happen. Next, please. This abnormal. Next, please. This abnormal climate created natural disaster. There is an example of the natural disaster: Europe, Russia, USA, China, and Japan. It seems like it happened all over the world, especially in Korea. We had heat wave this year, and it resulted to start tropical night 23 days earlier than normal. Next, please. So one of key issue is water. For the climate crisis, water issue is most complicated, but it's really urgent issue. UN did a consultation and decision of 17 Sustainable Development Goals Number 6 is water and sanitation. Also, people told the climate crisis clock is 9:47 p.m. So it's time for climate action beyond declaration. Next, please. So briefly, I'm going to introduce about my company, K-Water. You could guess our work. You already know we established in 1967. We started building hydropower. Our main work is supplying of the water to the people and improve water quality. In 2018, we built sustainable water circulation system. Also, we ranked number 1 of renewable energy company in Korea. Next, please. So we no previous one. So we have water and water-based infrastructure. So of course, we should water management plan. Next, please. Transition to climate change adaptation management. We did dam renovation for the securing disaster and improve water quality with ecosystem restoration. Also, at the same time, we start smart integrated water management system in regard to restoration of the nature and the efficiency of the water management and securing public water system. I'm going to talk about a little bit detail of the smart integrated water management system. Next, please. We do monitoring the dam system with alarm system, and we use drone for the checking. We analyze data by AI system, and based on digital twin, we predict earthquake and we set safety manual by digital data. The Dam Safety Center has technical and education support. This all of the work make a dam is safe for all of disaster. Next, please. So I already mentioned we are ranked number 1 of renewable energy in Korea. So we should support carbon neutrality, which is number 13 of the UN SDG. So let's see carbon neutral action plan of the K-Water. Next, please. We did a declaration of climate crisis management and introduced ESG management and joined RE100 at the spring of this year. This summer, we established 2050 carbon neutral roadmap. I will introduce a little bit detail of this carbon neutral roadmap. Unfortunately, limited the time, you could start this carbon neutral roadmap on our website. I'm going to talk about some point of this carbon neutral roadmap. Next, please. It includes discovery of the sink using water and water-based infrastructure, and expansion of the renewable energy, such as floating solar power and hydrothermal energy and green hydrogen. Next, please. Floating solar power is the solar power placed on the surface of the water in the dam. There are diagrams of the solar power system. This one is no damage to forest and has cooling effect to increase power generation efficiency. Also, it increases the number of the fish due to the shadow. Even, next please. Even we achieved the harmony with the local community. There are business model on the left side you could see. The residents participate in the project through the investment in the company. This company built by K-Water, and this company distribute from 4 to 10 points of interest for 20 years. It realized of social value. It's a really great project, but at the beginning of this project, we have difficulty because of due to misunderstanding of solar power. Next, please. So to solve this misunderstanding, we explained to local community about the solar power more than 10 times, and even we made a tour program for the people. Of course, we reflect their opinion, such as recruitment of residents first and regular meeting once a month. On the right side, you could see it was completed with this beautiful shape. So next, now we are focusing on the green hydrogen. This green hydrogen is produced from water and renewable energy without any CO2 emission. Because of the limitation of CO2 fossil fuel, we moved to renewable energy. But also renewable energy has some limitation, such as intermittent. Hydrogen is the solution at the end of decarbonization. So I'm talking about the green hydrogen, non-reforming hydrogen. So we introduce our two. So we should participate this green hydrogen project. Next, please. Why we should participate this green hydrogen project? Because one is we already did declaration of climate crisis next month. And the second one, we have 1,364 megawatt renewable energy facility. Third one, we can apply this system to water purification and industrial complex. Also, we have experience of the technology development and demonstration in water management field. So, our company can support the national hydrogen economy, including production and utilization. So I'm going to introduce two of the demonstrations which we started. Next, please. This one is about the green hydrogen. First one is green hydrogen is produced by small hydropower system, and then it connected to the station on site. Small hydropower has high efficiency, such as more than 60%, so it can produce the hydrogen 24 hours per day. Also, we are using wind and solar power to produce the hydrogen. We produce 300 kilograms of the hydrogen per day with this system. Through this demonstration, we are going to be forced to supply green hydrogen in Korea. Other one is with this demonstration, we also improve the water electrolysis technology, and we secure export of this hydrogen field. In the future, in 2035, we are planning to produce 35,000 tons of the green hydrogen per year. Final goal is we are going to supply, build a hydrogen city. That's all of our work. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hina, for introducing the initiative and the great efforts by K-Water in water management and carbon neutrality to address climate crisis. We are very impressed by the national water management through smart integrated management and also the engagement of residents through the experience program and the green hydrogen project for promoting the use of renewable energy. Thank you so much. So now we come into the Q&A session. So firstly, I would like to invite Mr. Ashish Mishra who is the international consultant of UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to make a short intervention about his recent research experience on country practices in the monitoring evaluation of the progress of SDG implementation, especially in the context of small island development states country contexts. With regard to the institutional coordination and mechanism of engaging relevant stakeholders. Yeah, Mr. Ashish, you have the floor for 2 minutes intervention.
Thank you very much for the floor. I kindly wanted to mention a couple of important points for discussion. First, the incorporation of a harmonized and integrated approach towards the SDGs is particularly challenging for the special case of LLDCs and small island developing states or SIDS in the region. In particular, they often struggle with operationalizing their numerous agreements, like the Samoa Pathway, the 2030 Agenda, the Sendai Framework, and the New Urban Agenda. Also, they lack the experience to effectively harmonize the multidimensional and cross-sector SDGs within the government apparatus. They also need to improve their intergovernmental aspects, such as the strengthening of local government finances. Finally, it lacked the processes for the inclusion of disparate stakeholders in the planning processes, and also they have a weak capacity to access financing for the SDGs. There are a few excellent examples of innovative practices in the region. First, Fiji is an innovative example of how it incorporated the SDGs in its 5-year and 20-year development plans. Through an inclusive VNR process, it linked all of the SDG indicators within the government apparatus. Fiji is also in the process of formalizing a central government entity for the cross-sector implementation, reporting, and monitoring evaluation of the SDGs, and has sought support from UNDESA and UNPUG to build its capacity. Fiji has also reported that quantifying the SDGs data is particularly important and challenging. Very quickly, Singapore is another innovative case of how it adopted a whole of government approach through its IMC SDG structure as the entity in charge for the SDGs. Through this process, it mapped out each department and agency's scope of responsibilities for the SDGs. Finally, New Zealand is an innovative case in that it developed a new set of indicators called the IANZ to measure the well-being of its communities, and it's closely aligned to the SDGs. To close, I hope to encourage further discussion and debate regarding innovative cases and examples in the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishira. So now I see in the Q&A box, there are some opening questions. Yeah. So I would like to select some questions for our speakers. The first question is from Mr. Dr. Aslam Alam, who is the chairman, Bangladesh Institute for Information, Literacy and Sustainable Development. The question is for Ms. Mahajibin China. The question is, what strategy Pakistan is pursuing to harness disaggregate data by gender, ethnicity, age, geographic areas, etc.? Is there any community-led SDG monitoring and reporting mechanism in Pakistan? Ms. Chima, can you please answer this question? Ms. Chima, you're with us, right? Left. Sorry. Then I would like, Honor Secretary Edilin, do you have any good answers for the question, like similarly to the country contextual in Philippines?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, originally the question from Dr. Aslam Alam is that what strategy Pakistan is pursuing to harness disaggregate data by gender, ethnicity, age, geographic areas, etc. And is there any community-led SDG monitoring reporting mechanism in Pakistan? I think similarly, you have the how would you respond this question in the context of Philippines? Yeah, thank you.
Yes. In the case of the Philippines, well, going forward, it will be much easier for us because we will have the community-based monitoring system where we will have data at the household level for all households in the Philippines. But previous to this, we just had, survey-based data. And we have been using small area statistics. So we have been using statistical methodology, merging the census data with the survey data so that we can come up with the disaggregated statistics on that. But of course, it's by Monte Carlo simulation, etc., etc. But like I said, going forward, then we would not need that anymore because we will have the real data on hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary. Another question is also from Dr. Aslam, but the question is very meaningful. The question is addressed to Ms. Ricky Hansen. Although Ricky already answered this question, but I still think this question is very important. The question is, it appears that national state offices are unable to generate data on many targets from their traditional sources, and there's a need for new sources of data. Now, what trends are observed in member countries in this regard? Ricky, can you give us a little more detailed explanation on this? I think it's a very important question. Thank you. Ricky.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Kipping, and thank you also for the excellent question. As you mentioned, I've tried to answer a little bit in writing, but it is a question that requires maybe a long answer. Indeed, some of the discussions leading up to the formulation of the 2030 agenda focused on big data and the data revolution, as it was called already back then. And that was because it is not a surprise to anyone that there is such difficulties in generating sufficient data for monitoring this very comprehensive agenda. Yeah, we are looking at 163 targets with even more indicators. And what we are seeing is a lot of exploration in statistical offices across Asia and the Pacific. We've heard some excellent examples in this session already. What we see is increased efforts to supplement, let's say, existing statistical data collections with both administrative data as well as different types of big data. Now, what we see very much is moves in the area of economic statistics because of the ongoing digitalization. So this particular area has been forced to move online to capture the digital economy. And that, of course, means that methods to, for example, scrape the web has taken off in recent years. We also see a lot of efforts in the use of satellite data, geospatial information throughout indicators. Anytime we want to localize data and statistics, this geospatial data comes in extremely handy. Now, I should say, though, we've done in ESCAP some investigation of what is the state of affairs in terms of the actual use of this type of data for official statistics production. And I should say that the majority of efforts are in an experimentation state. So they are used to supplement what we would all refer to as official statistics. They are not yet fully integrated in the regular statistics production. And some of the big issues faced to do this are actually some of the topics that are in focus of the whole symposium here. It relates to how do we engage in partnerships, for example, with the private sector, which is a holder of a lot of the data, for example, mobile phone data. And how do we make sure that we keep confidentiality, privacy? So the challenges related to the whole governance aspect, that certainly applies to, let's say, the whole data ecosystem as well as to governance more broadly. So maybe this supplements my written answer a bit, but we could have a whole meeting just about this. And I did put in my written answer also a link to a recent expert discussion that took place among several chief statisticians in Asia and the Pacific, where some of these challenges are elaborated, and also concrete examples of the use of big data are also linked there. So I just encourage everyone to, with that particular interest in diving a bit deeper into that through that link. So back to you, Kiping. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky, for a very good explanation about this very important issue. Yeah, thank you. So we do the time limit. I would like to one more question. Yeah. So the question is for Mr. Foba. The question is, in Bhutan, whether the people who live below poverty line are identified, how action plan is taken and implemented, and how cross-cutting issues are addressed in Bhutan. Mr. Foba, please. Yes, you have the floor, please. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this very good question from my dear friends. In Bhutan, we carry out poverty analysis report every after 5 years, and also population and housing census every after 10 years. And as per the poverty analysis report, the income poverty rate at the moment, as of 2017, is 8.2% of the people are living below below poverty line. So there are three-pronged approach to address this. I'm not very sure whether we have individually identified the people below poverty or not, but from the government side, there is an intervention, something called common minimum infrastructure or common minimum program, which is targeted towards, by the way, the poverty in Bhutan is predominantly a rural phenomena. So targeting towards the population largely living with the poverty, government has initiated something called a common minimum program. Through that, the poverty is being addressed. And secondly, in collaboration with the civil society organizations in Bhutan, the government also support programs to address the poverty, especially in the rural areas. And thirdly, and most importantly, all those people who have very limited means to support their livelihoods are being supported under His Majesty the King's relief support, which we call as Kidu support. Under that, all the families or people living with different abilities, people living with disabilities who cannot fend their livelihood are being supported by His Majesty the King. And we can safely say that there is no people in Bhutan going hungry without 3 square meals in a day. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Foba. Yeah, due to the time limits, yeah, I would like to close this Q&A session. For those participants, if you have any questions for our distinguished speakers, you can either send us emails or use the online discussion board to address your concerns and also for further exchange of views and with us. Yeah. So for this session, we discuss various dimensions of the governance dimensions of this monitoring evaluation. We talk a lot about the institutional coordination, institutional arrangements, especially the engaging the local and the communities for generating the data. And also, we also talk about some challenges, you know, about the data availability, and also especially some proposal, about the new innovative solutions about the data. And also, as Ms. Ricky just mentioned, that we could have many supplementary sources of data to amend the traditional official statistics for monitoring evaluation. Yeah. And also, we also talked about the local voluntary local review as implementation, yeah, by the cities, yeah. So I hope that this session could be very useful for you, and that if you have any further questions, please continue to talk with us. Yeah, thank you. With that, I would like to announce the conclusion of this session. Thank you. So we will have a short break and around 5 minutes, then we will continue with the session 3. Thank you so much for your attention. And also many thanks to our distinguished speakers for their efforts and the time and energy for this session. Thank you.
Five-minute break time.
안녕하세요, 김성수 부장님. 안녕하세요.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Good,
Hi, DJ
good
Kim.
afternoon. Good
Good
afternoon, Miss Haley. Nice
Yes,
to meet you
hi.
again.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay.
Yes, I think everything works well. We're just waiting for one more speaker for session 3. And yes. Okay, I'll just get in hold with him. Thank you.
DJ Kim, yeah, this is Kathleen. Hi.
Good
afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Keating.
Yeah. Since Mr. Vincenzo and also other speakers for this session, they are all here. I think I would suggest that you have a one-to-one talk, short checking with them about the audio and video. You can call upon one by one. Yeah.
All right. Hello, this is Kim. I'd like to first check the Mr. Vincenzo Aquaro.
Yes, that's me.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And I don't have a presentation, but we agreed that you will go through the 3 questions, correct?
Yes, right.
Okay,
right.
perfect. Sorry, also another thing, because I'm based in New York, it's very late, and tomorrow also, yesterday we have another event in the night, and tomorrow morning I have to be early in the office. I cannot stay till the end, so I cannot attend the Q&A part at the end of this session.
Okay.
So in case all the questions they can address to me, I will reply offline to everyone, and really my apologies, but it's very late for me. Stay another night. You know.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks
What time is now in New York?
Now is about 11 o'clock. But if I wait till the end of the session, will be more than midnight. And yesterday we also had another event in the evening. We ended at 2 o'clock in the night.
Okay. Now then, Mr. Ogang, the Vice President of the NIA Ogangta, are you here?
Here.
Okay. Then the next, I think I'd like to call on in the order of speaker. The Director General Sun Yong Jung.
Yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon.
Kim.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and I'm going to say a special hello to Vincenzo Aquaro. It's a long time.
Oh, okay. You.
I see many friends, my dear friends. Nice to see you. We miss you in New York.
Yeah. It's been a while. It's very nice to meet you again. Yeah.
Okay. You, the both of you are already the good acquaintance.
Yes.
Good colleagues in the working together in New York, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. Then the Mr. Anil Chaudhary, Program Advisor of the Access to Information Program in Bangladesh.
Hello. Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can see you now. Okay, nice to meet you.
Very nice meeting you. Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining today's session. Okay.
Thank you. Good
And
to see you, Vincenzo.
Okay.
Nice.
And
Nice
Mr. Zhang Lei, Professor
Yes.
Zhang Lei, Fudan University.
Yes.
Okay, nice to meet you, Professor Zhang Lei. Are you in Shanghai right now?
Yes. In Shanghai at the university.
Oh, how is the weather in Shanghai?
It's good. It's a sunny day. It's a very good weather.
Korea in Seoul is getting closer to winter season, so it's a very good color, but getting colder.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
So right now, we have all speakers present in this session.
Teacher Kim, may I suggest? Sorry, Teacher Kim, Mr. Dana Abu Nashi.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I forget the Miss Dana Abu Nasri, the
Hello, I'm here.
Sales Executive of Global Public Sector of IBM. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, very nice to meet you. I'm sorry, almost skip you calling you. Okay.
No problem.
So, Mr. Keping, is it okay to start our session now?
Yeah, let's start. Yeah.
Please. Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Sung-Soo Kim, Director General of the International Administrative Cooperation of Ministry of Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea. This is my great pleasure to meet you all. And before I start the session, I'd like to express my special congratulations to UNFOG, the 15th anniversary. And I'd like to congratulate message to Mr. Shim and your hardworking staff. And I'd like also to express my sincere gratitude to our distinguished speakers and participants for attending the session 3 of the symposium on effective governance and digital transformation for building back better and accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development. If you all participants allow me to show my appreciation to also the I contacted already the all speakers. First, Mr. Vincenzo Acquaro, Chief of the Digital Government Branch at the Division of the Public Institution and the Digital Government, UNDESA, and Mr. Kang Tak Oh, Vice President of the National Information Society Agency, NIA, and Mr. Son Yong Jung, Director General of Bureau of Local Innovation and the Ministry of Interior and Safety, and Mr. Anil Chaudhry, Program Advisor of the Access to Information Program, Bangladesh, and Ms. Dana Abu Nasra, Sales Executive of the Global Public Sector of IBM, and Professor Zhang Lei of Fudan University for their commitment to the contribution to this session. Let me briefly introduce this session 3. We are now in the process of moving forward an era of great digital transformation. As contactless services have become inevitable and critical due to COVID-19, the phase of transformation has become incredibly faster than we expected. Many countries, including the Republic of Korea, are utilizing digital technology to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Korea is operating a number of digital public services, such as the virtual assistant service for the public, and for vaccine reservation, and an application that helps self-quarantine of confirmed patient, and to respond to the pandemic. And the opening of public data has also enabled the public sector to use information in various ways. With the expansion of digitalization, the digital divide between digital haves and have-nots has become a concern also. The digital divide that affects the vulnerable, such as the elderly, and the differences in the internet environment between countries have deepened the polarization of countries and social classes. In this regard, I believe that the government should play a larger role in helping the entire society gain access to digital information more universally. Today's our session will be a good platform to seek ways for these issues to facilitate digital transformation and innovation. The participant will present their perspective on how digital transformation and innovation can be achieved in a convenient manner at the individual or institutional and social levels, and how digital technology can be strengthened while bridging the digital divide. Other topics of interest will include ways to enhance public service, public-private digital cooperation, and global partnership. I raised the session topics to all your speakers. Before we start, I'd like to introduce the technical matters. Today's session will be recorded and uploaded on UNFOG's website. And the unfog step will take care of technical problems such as online connection issues. And please inform the staff in the event that you have faced any technical problems. For smooth progress of our session, please kindly mute your microphone when you are not speaking. And every speaker will be given about 12 minutes for his or her presentation, and the speaker will receive about 3 minutes left, 1 minute left, and time over kinds of message via Zoom chat box. So you can plan your make your plan for your conclusion. And after all speakers, the presentation have finished, they will be followed by about 20 minutes question and answers session. So now I'd like to introduce the first speaker, the Mr. Vincenzo Acquaro. He is the Chief of Digital Government Branch at the UNDESA, and he will talk about the talk about promoting innovation for effective and inclusive public service delivery and accelerating digital transformation for building the better. And his presentation will be the question and answer format. So I'd like to give you the Vincenzo first question is, what would be the effective strategy and approaches to promote innovation for effective and inclusive public service delivery? Mr. Vincenzo Acquaro, do you have the floor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And first, let me also congratulate with the organizer, with our colleague from UMPOG, and also for celebrating the 15th anniversary, and really for this very successful symposium. So really, congratulations to all. And thanks for always inviting us. So coming back on your first question, let me start saying that the innovation and public service delivery have been a consistent. Sorry? So let me start saying that innovation and public service delivery have been consistently acknowledged by the United Nations member states as key pillars for sustainable development. Out of the 17 sustainable development goals, 13 goals relate to public service delivery, and 59 of these 169 SDGs target related to public service delivery. Digital technologies plays an increasingly critical role in ensuring such public service delivery and become vital in sustaining financial, healthcare, public services, in pursuing education, and in offering social connections. And the purpose of digital government, however, is not and should not be mere digitalization of existing bureaucracies. In this context, it is pertinent to invest in strategies and approaches that promote effective and inclusive public service delivery. Successful strategies shift e-government from being ever present in people's life to becoming rather invisible, more in back-end. Government should not ask to citizens twice if the information or data are already available and stored in public systems, or even should not ask at all if the service that should provide belong to some specific life event of the citizen and information is already available. A modern public administration system should proactively offer automated services accessible anytime, from anywhere, and at the user's convenience. And this approach helps to reimagine the ways in which government collaborate and interact with their constituencies, and how they provide services to leave no one behind. But before thinking on strategies and approaches for leaving no one behind, governments should put first more effort for leaving no one offline. If we look at connectivity and access to internet, the 2030 Agenda requests worldwide that every person has a safe and affordable access to internet by 2030, including meaningful use of digital enabled services. I'm not sure if this target will be reached. And a second point for an effective strategies is to include the implementation of comprehensive digital identity systems. Digital ID can unlock opportunities for the most vulnerable and contribute to maximize privacy, inclusion, and trust in an increasingly wide range of domains. But adapting digital identity systems also means government able to implement robust legal and technical frameworks for data protection and privacy. And as third point, it is noticed that most effective strategies often rely on big data, analytics, and adopt frontier technologies such as AI, robotics, blockchain to ensure effective outreach and provision services. So in the future, we will likely see more anticipatory functions in digital government and public service delivery than we do now. And last but not least, an effective strategies must substantially increase investment and approaches in human capital, encourage STEM education, and improve digital skill and digital capabilities in the government. Engagement of people at all levels is also critical, as well as sharing of lessons learned and case studies among the countries. Back to you, Mr. Moderator. Your second question?
DJ Kim, you are muted. Please unmute.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm very poor at managing technology about this Zoom meeting system. So thank you very much, Mr. Vincent Zhou. You had a very comprehensive, insightful introduction about the strategy, especially 4 points. Among them, I think it is very impressive. You are using it should not be mere digitalization and the leaving no behind plus the no one offline and comprehensive digitalization ID system. I think it is very meaningful and the relevant to current strategy. So I'd like to then in this connection, what are the major challenges in accelerating digital transformation or your strategies about 4 points in the developing countries?
Thank you very much also for this session, for these questions. And you also highlighted very well in your introduction about which are these digital challenges. Because for me, I have no doubt that the first one indeed is digital divide. It is estimated that about 47% of the total population in the world cannot access to internet, but only 19% of people in LDC's countries can use internet. And while at global level, more than 90% of the population already has access to a mobile broadband network, but if we look at Africa on CIS regions, they facing the biggest gap, where respectively in Africa 23% and in CIS 11% of the population have no access to a mobile broadband network. So about a quarter of the population in LDCs and landlocked developing states, and about 15% of the SIDS population still do not have access to a broadband network. And there is also a gender gap in internet use. is also a stark example. In 2 of the every 3 countries, more men use the internet than women. So the lack of ICT infrastructure facilities prevents people from connecting with the external world and be part of digital economy. And many developing countries cannot afford the high construction cost. So they cannot improve ICT infrastructure, which impedes their national digital transformation and the worldwide technological revolution. Furthermore, it is easy to see the high price of digital devices and the monopoly in the broadband connection market. So these gaps points to persistent challenges that continue to undermine the efforts of development of the countries in special groups, and in particular the LDCs. And you already also mentioned COVID-19 pandemic has magnified the digital gap between developed and developing countries, because as inflicted global economy and limited people's traveling, so online life has become a mainstream of the world. And nothing makes developing countries feel more difficult to keep the pace with digital transformation than when they feel the bottleneck of techniques and digital platform. At the same time, also, the abilities for people of different age, gender, social class, and region to obtain digital resources are enlarged by the pandemics, especially in developing countries. So this is a good news. But digital inequality all among groups also grows into a dilemma for all countries, developing and developed. And the last consideration is about safety and regulation. Fast-paced digital development pushes fast and broad exchanges of people information, bringing serious and urgent ethical, social, and regulatory questions to us. This phenomenon is more frequent to happen in developing countries, where a regulation about data security is relatively incomplete, causing hesitation in continuing digital transformation in those countries. Therefore, and I conclude, the extent of concerning data security and the completing regulation laws can be another challenge for digital transformation in developing countries. And I conclude. Back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I think I'm very much surprised to hear about such high and deep digital divide and digital divide and the gap. So it is quite the surprise, and I think your detailed elaboration on these major challenges is quite very helpful to understand the current situation in the developing countries. In this regard, I'd like to ask you then, what the kinds of the work or the performance have done by your office, digital government branch, and digital the division of public institution and digital government regard to support the process of digital formation and the global digital cooperation. Can you
Yes, thank you. And as you have already introduced me, really, I have the privilege and the honor to lead the work on digital government in digital government branch as part of the division for public institution and digital government, UNDESA, and I'm also have the privilege to work with colleagues like the colleagues in UNPOC. Our mandate place high priorities on digitalizations in the public sector and how digital transformation offers governments the opportunity to do their job better, to build back better in response to COVID pandemic, and put us back on track to achieving the SDGs. But as said before, digital transformation also comes with its own challenges. So including, but not limited to, lack of resources, lack of capacities, know-how, data governance, security, among others. These are also concerns that the introduction of new technologies will further widen the digital divides and leave more people behind. That is why we also attach importance to supporting capacity development of developing countries and countries in special situation, including the LDCs, small island developing states, and landlocked developing countries. We work in close partnership with countries according to their national priorities, and also in close collaboration and synergies with the other UN agencies, regional commissions, as well as with the academia, think tanks, and other experts in the e-government. Some of those experts are today and were also yesterday, and we will also be tomorrow of this very prestigious symposium. Our major focus in the the United Nations e-government survey sub-program that tracks progress on the e-government development among 193 member states, so all UN member states, through the e-government development index. And the surveys pay special attention to developing countries and offers analytical insight and policy recommendation on digital transformation to its audience. The survey findings also allow policymakers and experts to tailor their efforts and strategies in e-government development in line with the country needs and global e-government trends. And I am also happy to announce that we are in the middle of preparation of the next edition of the survey that will be launched next year, and that we will focus more on future of digital government. But other core activities I'd like to mention is about capacity development, including development account project on policy experimentation regulatory sandboxes. One of our more recent projects is focusing on regulatory sandbox experimentation, because frontier technologies carry a promise to fast track the SDGs through supporting innovative, forward-looking policies and solutions. These are, however, numerous risks and complexity to digital technologies that come along with those opportunities, such as policy and regulatory challenges. In this context, we are implementing this development account project with our sister agency, UNESCO. The objective of this project is to enhance institutional capacity of selected countries. One of these is today in my panel, Bangladesh. And also countries in special situations to understand and develop digital technology policy experimentation. We also provide other capacity development support, including in area of local government, digital identity, data governance, e-participation, and others. And I will stop here. I don't want to take all the time. Thanks again for your questions, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vincenzo. You detailed describe of your efforts and contribution for the resolving, addressing the digitalization issue in the developing countries. Especially you are supporting the such countries as the LDCs and the landlocked countries. I think it is very important job and very impressive for your support. Thank you very much, Mr. Vincenzo, and I'd like to release you now for your tomorrow's job. So we will see you again through other occasions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we heard about the digital transformation, especially in terms of the digital divide in the developing countries from Mr. Vincenzo. Now, I appreciate again Mr. Vincenzo's contribution for our session, and now we have we will turn to the next speaker, the innovative practice of national and local government. The theme is innovative practice in national and local government. and discuss the visions and roadmaps and strategy for accelerating digital transformation and promoting social innovation for building back better. We have two speakers from Korean side, and we'll give a presentation on this topic. The first, I think the Kang-tak Oh will make the first presentation, and followed by the Sun Yong-jung, Director General. I think the floor is open, yours, Mr. Oh. Mr. Oh, please. Mr. Oh, I think your microphone is on mute.
Yes, yes, please. Thank you for your warm and kind introductions. And it's my honor to me to deliver a presentation about the Korean government digital innovation strategy in today's symposium hosted by UNDESA and UNPO jointly. And next, please. Next, please. This slide shows you briefly the history of Korean e-government. As you can see from this slide, it's been more than 50 years since the beginning of digital government in Korea, when Korean government introduced its first computer for census. Until 1994, our main goal is the informatization of public administration. Getting fast ICT development, the transformation of the Korean government also was made rapidly. In 1980s, National Information and Communication Networks was settled down. In 1990s, the digitized government services were launched. In 2001, the enactment of e-government law triggered the nationwide scale e-government projects with the top political and administrative priority. At last, we could call our services as e-government truly. The integrated data center shared by all ministries in 2005 enabled system integration and remodeling, which led to higher efficiency and security. Now, we are revising and devising plans of intelligent digital governments with the help of emerging digital technologies such as AI, cloud computing, big data, blockchain, etc. Next, please. Into 2020, all countries faced the unprecedented crisis, COVID-19. Until now, the mankind was challenged by this pandemic. Next. As you know, the COVID-19 has brought up big changes to prevent from spreading the virus. Social distance has been the critical rule we should keep. Korean government also has recognized ICT as a very important tool to ensure resilience in society. It was already mentioned by the Director Generals. Next, please. Applying various ICT to keep our society safe from the COVID-19, Korean government could have introduced some good practice called as K-quarantines, which use AI and data. Private-public partnership was the main and crucial success factor of these challenges. Government provide data and the private sectors take part in the whole process to formulate these services. Next, please. Digital transformation is a key means of overcoming the crisis and an essential element to cope with the post-COVID-19 era. Challenging COVID-19 and making a turning point, Korean government revised the existing digital government innovation plan, which was created in 2019 to the Digital Government Innovation Development Plan in 2020, better suited to the new normal after COVID-19. Next, please. Digital government innovation can be the door to a better world using digital technologies to their fullest potential. And our new vision is building a better world where the digital will build the full strategy. And we proposed about 40 initiatives for each strategies. Next, please. First strategy is expanding of the non-contact services due to the COVID-19. Our citizens' needs for non-contact services has greatly increased. It's essential to re-engineer the government administration process to implement effective and convenient non-contact services. Mobile, digital ID, and My Data projects are our catalyst for whole work process re-engineering. The processes based on paper documents have redesigned based on dataset and online transactions. We hope almost every public services could be applied and delivered without any paper document and any physical content in the near future. Next. Second strategy is innovating government service delivery, more tailored and more proactive. People can submit application and search information through gov.kr or Government24 as a single gateway of e-government. With the association between the citizen-friendly front-end interfaces and integrated, customized, and seamless back-end services, our government could be a very helpful friend to each citizen. Next. It's a very long and difficult way for government to achieve true digital innovation. Partnership with the private sector has made this journey more efficient. Our third strategy is creating collaboration digital ecosystem, adapting private sectors, developing technologies, and private sector's digital services. Government could also get more capacity to enable agile and efficient public administration. Providing public data and services as open APIs, government could help creating healthy business and markets. The private sector will also benefit in the course of collaboration. Through the collaboration, for example, offering data and services will contribute to both service innovation and growth of digital economy by creating unprecedented personalized services for finance management. Next, please. Connectivity and accessibility have been more important due to the expansion of non-context digital services, and the cybersecurity is a mandatory requirement to provide a reliable and robust services. Most of all, digital inclusion should be considered to leave no citizen behind. Digital infrastructure should be enhanced to resolve these issues, and the government officials should be trained to fully utilize the infrastructure and related digital services. Next, please. I'd like to ask you your understanding for skipping the achievements section due to my time limit. Would you show us the page 17 slide? Please refer to the achievement in more detail by my presentation materials. To conclude my presentation, I'd like to share my insight for a critical success factor. In other words, recommendation for success of digital transformation for government. Next, please. The whole technologies related to digital transformation, such as AI, big data, cloud, and blockchain, etc., should be integrated and implemented as an organic force. I think digital transformation could be successfully achieved when AI, big data, and cloud projects were integratedly planned and implemented, not separately. Next, please. Witnessing the whole experience to challenge the COVID-19, government alone is not enough. We need a private sector's cooperation. Collaborative governance between the government and the private sector is a vital factor to achieve digital transformations. And next. As you know already, without the continuous investment, the journey to the digital transformation cannot be continuous, cannot be achieved, and also proactive and driving leadership is needed to implement the strategies and the plans for the transformations. Next, please. Is the last one. Enhancing digital competency of government officials are the vital key for successful digital transformation. Korean government established a knowledge platform for government officials and set up data job series for the fulfillment to digital transformation in Korea. Like always, our attention should be directed to the people and the human capacity. Next, please. I hope my presentation for sharing Korean government experience and insight would help the sustainable development of the global community through the digital transformation. Before finishing my presentation, I am sorry to say to all participants before finishing my presentation, to be sorry, I have to be scheduled to deliver another presentation in the academic conference, which is take place on the about 10 minutes distance at 1:40 p.m. So after finishing my presentation, inevitably I have to leave my this session. So I will send my answer to your all questions about my presentation by email to the UN desk on for the secretary and clients. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kang Tago. Your detailed presentation about digital transformation for Korean government cases. I think it is very useful and impressive. In this area, the Korean government, especially the NIA, is striving for effort to address all this digital transformation issue. Now, I'd like to call on Mr. Sun Yong-jung. Continue to the presentation on this subject. Mr. Jung, please.
Me? Okay.
Mr. Jung.
Okay.
Son Jung. No, Mr.
No, me,
Son
okay.
from Korea
All
side.
right. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm very pleased to meet you all. My name is Son Jung, and I'm the Director General of the Local Innovation Bureau of the Ministry of the Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea. It is a great honor to be here for this presentation at the UN Symposium, and I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations on the 15th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations Project Office on Governance. Today, I'm going to talk about social innovation policies that the central and local governments of the Republic of Korea are carrying out together. Among them, I will focus on Commons Field, which is a project that seeks to create a foundation for social innovation. Next slide, please. One of the major keywords today is complexity. We are living in an era of extremely high complexity in which it is becoming increasingly difficult to predict and solve problems within the traditional roles of the government and the market. To respond to these changes, citizens must play an active role in solving problems in their local communities as co-producers, going beyond simple beneficiaries of government policies. Next, please. Social innovation is the process of discovering and solving local problems through new ideas based on the participation of the stakeholders involved and cooperation among various fields. The Korean government has been promoting social innovation as a national task since 2018 under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of the Interior and Safety. Next, please. To promote social innovation, a new public facility that welcomes citizen participation and supports the local problem-solving process is required. Commons Field is not a simple space creation project, but a project for creating a foundation for social innovation that enhances the problem-solving capabilities of local communities. Next, please. Commons Field has 3 subspaces and 3 processes. While maximizing common areas and minimizing dedicated areas, it created welcome spaces that are free of thresholds, such as cafes, lounges, and libraries. Shared spaces, such as meeting rooms, auditoriums, and shared kitchens, and independent spaces. In particular, with efforts to increase the popularity of the space, Commons Field won the Red Dot Design Award, one of the world's 3 major design awards. As you may know, K-pop boy band BTS, who recently attended the UN General Assembly meeting as a presidential envoy of the Republic of Korea, received the same award for their album package designs. Next, please. Commons Field supports the process of discovery, where new actors emerge and local agendas are identified. Experiment, where there is cooperation among various fields and possible solutions are verified. And diffusion, where implementation processes are disseminated and results are shared. Through these processes, it also promotes citizen participation and communication. Next, please. Under the Commons Field project, the city of Chuncheon remodeled the former public procurement service building. The city of Jeonju remodeled its former brothels and unused shopping malls, and the city of Jeju remodeled the former Korea Development Bank building. All 3 were spaces that had been neglected for decades, but now they have been transformed into places that more than 220,000 people have visited. In particular, the new heroes based in the city of Chuncheon received the Energy Globe Award. a global environmental award from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, or UNIDO, in December 2020. Next, please. So far, I have explained the basic framework of Commons Field. Now, I would like to move on to some examples related to the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. Elderly Care Cafe, which is related to SDG number 3, is a project for supporting the daily health management of the elderly through qualified nurses stationed at a community building. This project led to the establishment of the nation's first village care nursing cooperative and was included in the budget of Chuncheon City. Now there are 3 elderly care cafes in operation. Next, please. Let's move on to the project of Transform Sunmicheon, which is related to SDG number 5, gender equality. Sunmicheon is a place where about 85 brothels were located until early 2000. Since 2014, Jeonju City has been pursuing a gradual transformation of the area in cooperation with private sector by purchasing the buildings one by one and changing them into spaces that residents can use for various activities. The transformation of Sunmicheon was accelerated with the launch of Commons Field in 2019. Among other facilities, an exhibition hall was established on the first floor to display the history of prostitution for the first time and thereby record and reflect on the history of women's human rights violations. This building is now a new attraction for domestic and foreign visitors. And in July 2019, it was officially certified by the Korean National Commission for UNESCO as a Sustainable Development Education Project. There are many other examples, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it here. Next, please. The vision of Commons Field is to create a community where all residents can contribute to problem solving in their own ways. It also aims for a society where various local problems are solved easily. As shown by the slogan of the UN SDGs, leave no one behind. The SDGs include not only poverty alleviation, but also broad-ranging, comprehensive goals such as social and economic development, environmental protection, and democracy. Cases discovered, experimented with, and spread by citizens through Commons Field are closely related to most of the 17 SDGs. This shows the universality of the SDG derived through collective intelligence as well as power of ordinary citizens living in the local community. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea will continue promoting social innovation policies that strengthen the power of citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jung, the Director General, for introducing how the Commons Field project, the Korean practice, promotes social innovation at the national level and local levels. I think I'd like to recommend you present this Korean practice to UN Public Service Award for sharing your case with the worldwide government. I look forward to hearing about my recommendation and also maybe there's many questions about the practice, the very curious, the many participants showing they're curious about your practice. So I will bring you back after Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for kind words for our project and your recommendation. And we'll think it over to submit our application to the public service. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor our third speaker, Mr. Anil Chowdhury of Access to Information program, who will address the digital divide for promoting inclusive public service delivery and digital transformation, with the theme bridging the gap between digital services and analog citizens, bridging the digital divide in public service delivery. Mr. Anil Chowdhury, the floor is open to you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Distinguished moderator, panelists, distinguished audience of the symposium. May I now share my slides? Can you see the slides?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Trying to bring it to full screen. Do you see the full screen?
Can you try pressing F5?
Yeah. Is it full screen? I don't understand. Is it full or?
Can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it. But
okay, wonderful. Thank you. So the digital Bangladesh, our digitization journey actually started about 13 years ago. And this is what it looked like. We started very late amongst many countries. In 2008, when our Honorable Prime Minister proclaimed the concept of digital Bangladesh, moving towards a digital society, and she set the target to this year, 2021, the 50th anniversary of the country's independence. We, at that time, had about 10% of the service providers within the government had access to computing, but they also thought that they should not touch these computers because they would get destroyed. So they kept them on the tables covered. We had about less than 1% internet penetration and less than 10 services that were digitally available. So that's what we started with about 13 years ago. Now, look at the picture of public, and I would call them analog public, and digital services. I mean, we have in the last 12 years, we've digitized over 1,000 services. But typically, services would come in the form of making physical visits, in-person visits to specific service delivery organizations. Sometimes they would be 50 kilometers away, sometimes even 200 kilometers away, the capital city. They would have to make physical visits. So what we did was we started introducing a national portal, bangladesh.gov.bd, that has almost 700 services now that citizens could access by coming to this one portal. This portal also hosts about 50,000 offices of the government. So it's the entire government under one umbrella on the internet. We then introduced last year, just before the pandemic, an app called MyGov, which also has several hundred services from different ministries. So the whole idea was to take a whole of government approach and bring services from many different ministries and directorates. We have about 60 ministries, about 400 directorates, and about 2,500 or so services that the government delivers to citizens and small businesses. So the idea was to bring them into a portal and to an app. But we realized that citizens were still not digital. They did not have access. They did not. They were not able to afford internet. As Vincenzo talked about in his speech, that a large number of population in LDCs and lower income countries, middle income countries, they still don't have access to the internet. And the case is similar in Bangladesh. We now have about 65% penetration of internet, but still a lot of people are outside the internet. So we started setting up digital centers. And this was one of the things that we started actually doing from the very beginning. And these are centers where people come and they actually access service. I'll talk more about them, how this is done. And then recently, in the last 2-3 years, and especially during the pandemic, we also started setting up helpline. So there is a national helpline 333, which allows citizens to call in and access information and services. So these are the ways that we are actually connecting citizens through multiple channels, through the internet, through smartphones, through physical centers, which we call digital centers, and through the national helpline by having people call into these helplines. So some of the success stories of the digital centers, we now have over 8,000 digital centers across the country, most of them within walking distance, 2 kilometers of a citizen, except for the hilly areas where the centers are still far away. The last 12 years, we have actually delivered about 700 million services from these centers. There are 300 different types of services that are available. And the interesting thing is that these centers are run by entrepreneurs. They are hosted in government offices, but are run by entrepreneurs. There is a very unique form of public-private partnership at the local level, at the local government institutions. All local government institutions, about 5,000 of them, featured these centers. And we have about 3,000 centers in the private sector as well, purely private sector. But this combination of public and private within a government office run by entrepreneurs, about 16,000 entrepreneurs that run these centers, have provided these 700 million services the last few years. The national helpline became the lifeline during the coronavirus, during the pandemic. So people would call in to ask information about the spread of the pandemic, information about vaccines. They would do registration by calling into this number. This number became the largest telemedicine service provider with thousands of doctors who provided free service during the height of the pandemic. This number also helped a very large number of people access emergency food services. So they would call into this number and provide their information and address, and a local administrator would verify, and then emergency food was distributed. Again, this number became the lifeline. So essentially what I'm trying to point out is that in countries where internet is not prevalent form of access to services, there are other alternatives that are emerging, such as the feature phone, and also physical locations where people could get assisted services. In the last 10 years, we've done a calculation across several hundred services, and we have seen that we have saved citizens about 2 billion days, about $8 billion, and 1 billion visits have been eliminated. So essentially, this has what we call a TCV, and this has become policy in Bangladesh. We measure our service delivery inefficiency with the TCV number. So the higher the TCV, the more inefficient a service is. So every ministry and every innovation officer in every ministry is instructed to reduce TCV every year for every service delivery. So if we do a comparison of the last 13 years in Bangladesh, what has happened since the introduction of the concept of digital Bangladesh, digitization in public service delivery, we are still a poor country, but we have almost quadrupled our per capita income. Literacy rate has gone up significantly, electricity has gone up, but importantly, our internet penetration has gone up almost 100 times in the last 12 years. Mobile penetration almost 8 times. Digital services went from less than 10 to over 1,000, as I mentioned. The digital centers in 2008, we had 2 centers which we experimented with, which expanded to over 8,000 now. We have the concept of chief innovation officer in every ministry and every directorate agency, every district and sub-district. So now we have about 1,000 chief innovation officers with 1,000 teams that they lead across the entire government. Now, during the pandemic, one of the things that we actually saw was this very stark divide. I think Mr. Kim, you talked about it, Vincenzo talked about it, and Bangladesh is no different from any other developing country, is that even though we have reduced the cost of internet in the last 10 years many, many times, possibly I think it's 1/50th of what it used to be at one point, but still it's unaffordable to the bottom 2 quintiles. If you look at the bottom 40% of the population, 1 GB data still costs 3.58% of their average monthly income. The target set by Alliance for Affordable Internet, a Washington DC based think tank, is that 1 GB of data should cost no more than 2% of the monthly gross income. And now it's still, for the lower quintiles, it's still unaffordable. So that's where we are actually spending a lot of time right now. We have the vision of the Prime Minister, My Village, My Town, which is essentially saying that the amenities of the town will be available in the villages, and that's where we have actually launched several projects. InfoSarkar is one project where we are setting up fiber connectivity to 2,600 rural local government institutions. Another government telecom provider is setting up connection to 1,000 local government institutions, and another project setting up fiber connection to about 800. So by the end of this year, we'll actually cover all rural local government institutions with fiber optic. And we are also revising our broadband policy, which will become much more citizen-centric. And this is the whole focus around the new broadband policy, is to reduce the cost of internet, making it affordable and available to all citizens of the country in the next few years, certainly by 2030. One other thing I wanted to point out is the cottage, micro, small, and the medium enterprises. They were the worst hit during the pandemic because most of them were not digital. They actually did not get onto the digital bandwagon, for many reasons: capacity issue, affordability issue, availability issue across the country. So 50%, over 50% actually almost shut down their operations during the pandemic. And given that it's 25% of our GDP, 85% of our employment, it is significant. So we have taken a very important approach and expanding this. We are expanding e-commerce throughout the entire country, and what we call rural assisted e-commerce. So instead of the traditional e-commerce where buyers and sellers get onto a platform, we have a platform called ActShop, which is connected to about 20 of our largest e-commerce platforms in the country. But this allows buyers and sellers to go to one of the digital centers that I mentioned, the 8,000 or so digital centers across the entire country. And the digital center entrepreneurs help the buyer and seller to get online and to do transactions. They become proxy for the buyer and seller to do transactions online, to do logistics, to do payments, electronic payments. And now we are connecting the ActShop platform to our national helpline, 333, so that the phone can also be connected to this platform. So people can actually call into the helpline and can do transactions over the phone. That will be then taken to the internet. So it's the phone accessing the internet through an assisted e-commerce platform. The TV was used during the pandemic as an alternative for education. We put a lot of our material online on internet, but we noticed again that only 20 to 30% of our students were able to access the internet. The school-going children were able to access the internet. So we repurposed the Parliament TV as education TV, and that became another lifeline for education. So thousands of teachers actually started broadcasting through TV. So they recorded their sessions, and we did a lot of broadcasting for primary and secondary and even vocational education, madrasa education on TV. So TV became an alternative to education. I would like to end with a complicated slide. So when we talk about the digitization strategy, inclusive public service digitization strategy, we think about the citizen. So there is direct access where we see mobile phones, smartphones, internet, but then we also have assistive access that I mentioned. So the digital centers where people can actually go physically and then can get assistance. The 333 as a national helpline. And we're also introducing a lot of disability friendly approaches. And we think about the capacity of the service provider. So there is a customer innovation lab that we have set up, which continuously develops capacity of the service providers, of our public officials, into design thinking. So there's a lot of design thinking methods that are introduced to the customer innovation lab. We're trying to institutionalize all the e-services. There is a lot of data-driven decision making, and the pandemic has really shown us that this is very, very critical to do data-driven decision making. So there's a lot of dashboard that has come up in health and in socioeconomic parameters. And we started a new initiative called the Civil Service 2041. The next target for Digital Bangladesh journey is 2041, which is 20 years away. And the reason is that our Prime Minister has set 2041 as the target to become a high-income country for Bangladesh. Now we are a low middle income country, the target that we have achieved ahead of the 2021 goal, several years ahead of the 2021 goal, and the next target is to become a high-income country. The different digitization approaches, there is a rapid digitization approach where we actually use the foundation Lego blocks. So I think Vincenzo in his speech talked about digital ID as a foundational block. We have payment systems that we have put in place. We have workflow systems. So there are many different Lego blocks that we have built over the last 10 years that are now allowing us to build new innovations and new services very, very quickly. We have introduced the concept of, within the civil service, concept of govpreneurship. So in the idea of merging entrepreneurship within the public officials. And we see 4 different things that actually allow us to do this. One is setting the purpose, setting a vision for service delivery, giving a fair bit of autonomy to the public official to do experimentation and fail. So we say that there is license to fail in our public service now. There is several types of competence that we're trying to develop. So digitization, design thinking, data-centric decision-making. So a lot of skills development programs that we have introduced, and a lot of collaboration with the private sector. So that's how we are actually looking at a public official becoming an entrepreneur and using digitization as a way to innovate and reduce time, cost, and the number of visits within public service delivery. Thank you very much for your patience here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Chaudhary. Your detailed the presentation about in addressing the digital divide. It is quite impressive, especially the language. The governorpreneurship is, I think, quite fresh for us. So you may have questions about it at the Q&A session. Thank you very much. And now we have the next speaker, Miss Dana Abu Nasra from IBM. I invite her to talk about promoting public-private partnership for advancing global digital cooperation. The floor is yours, Miss Dana Abu Nasra.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, UN DESA and UNPUG for having me. I'm honored to be back again to present a point of view on promoting public-private partnership. Today, I'm going to be sharing what PPP or P3 means in a digital world, sharing some best practices and some examples from the field on how digital technologies can fast track our journey towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And lastly, I'll be outlining a collaborative and kind of a quick win, a quick way to get started with cross-functional, cross-domain collaboration. And lastly, just to introduce myself, I'm part of IBM's global public sector team, where I work with different governments around the world on advancing their digital agendas. Next chart, please. So firstly, as some of the previous speakers have mentioned, disruptive forces are coming together in a really powerful way, presenting new challenges and opportunities for society. And when we look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, these are our North Star. But some of the factors that we should take into consideration is the ongoing digital divide. So for example, in the US during the pandemic, 1 in 5 teenagers reported being unable to do their homework often or sometimes due to unreliable internet access. When we look at the skills crisis, we keep hearing about the Great Resignation, which what economists are referring to. Many people are leaving their jobs, or jobs are left open because the job market doesn't have the right skills. A lot of the skills nowadays that are in demand are very technical or digital. Jobs in the future don't exist today, and the half-life of skills is halving. So we do have a skills and jobs crisis on our hands. At the same time, there is rapid technology innovation that's moving really fast, and sometimes even faster than what regulators and the government can keep up with. We have climate change concerns, weather events, and their impact are some of the highest world risks according to the World Economic Forum. Natural disasters as well are a big consideration. The global pandemic, of course, has had ripple effects for society. And lastly, population growth, the move to cities, and the lack of infrastructure for all of this congregation of people. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we are today. And one of the best tools we have to address these disruptive forces are public-private partnerships. And it's important to recognize while we are, facing this, this current situation, over the past few centuries, society has progressed. The ease of doing business has gone up. Innovation and research continues to be, global and transformational. Global literacy rates are up. Maternal mortality has declined. So although we're, not to scare everyone off about the trends, there have been a lot of progress thanks to P3. Next chart, please. So just to share a definition, a public-private partnership is a long-term contract between a private party and a government agency for providing a public asset or service in which the private party bears significant risk and management responsibility. So PPP has been around for a long time, and it does have, various different models and structures. There's no agreed upon definition, but typically it's seen as related to infrastructure, so physical infrastructure. But for the sake of today, I'd like to open up our minds to thinking about PPE in terms of digital infrastructure, digital transformation, and collaboration. Next chart, please. Public sector has always been at the forefront of innovation, although many times we see government and public sector as siloed, as manual, as bureaucratic. A lot of our biggest inventions, most innovative companies have been able to succeed thanks to the intervention, the policy, and the forward thinkingness of the public sector. There's an economist, Mariana Mazzucato, who said, there is not a single key technology behind the iPhone that has not been state funded. Other examples include electric vehicles, landing man on the moon and the Apollo missions, and a lot of pharmaceutical drug advancements. Next chart, please. And a case study of this is what we're living through now, which is the pandemic, and Operation Warp Speed, which was launched by the U.S. federal government, bringing together, various government agencies, such as the FDA, the Department of Defense, the CDC, with the private sector, so with pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, to speed up and accelerate the safe delivery of vaccines. It was an $18 billion funded project, and it led to what we have now, which is reliable and safe vaccines. And this is a great example of P3, not necessarily in the digital field, but an example of how impactful it can be. Related to the pandemic as well, my organization, IBM, and other tech companies joined a consortium with the White House and Department of Energy to provide supercomputing powers to help researchers develop the vaccine. So that's another example of the private and public sector coming together to collaborate. And lastly, I'll leave you with a quote from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who said, during the pandemic, what we saw was ICT, digital companies, being our digital first responders. So being there to help citizens access information, to help governments work remotely, to help students learn from home. So ICT companies have really been partners with government during this time. Next chart, please. So the key message here is that the time is now. So we do these technologies, some examples are on this chart, such as AI, cloud, blockchain. They're no longer emerging. They're here, they're accessible, and they have been allowing for enhanced digital cooperation. And there is, there is room for more. Next chart, please. And currently, digital-driven partnerships have helped countries progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So as some of the previous speakers have mentioned, data is really one of the core elements of achieving the UN SDGs. Ginny Rometty, the former IBM CEO, said data is the new oil. So data is so important. Understanding data is so important, yet very difficult. Most of the data that exists is not used and not leveraged. So that is, one key way overall digital companies can help the public sector and other institutions and other sectors as well achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And some examples that I can share with you from these companies relate to companies helping in their capacity as employers, as good corporate citizens, what they're doing to help with their own footprint. And secondly, as providers of services and offerings to advance the SDGs. And thirdly, as partners and program creators. Those are kind of the three ways that sum up how digital companies and tech companies are helping advance the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll share a few examples. So Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, isn't one of the SDG advocates. And they have programs such as partnering with the WHO to develop big data solutions to increase the WHO's ability to address the COVID pandemic and also future health challenges. They have increased digital inclusivity by promoting innovative, lower cost solutions and bringing broadband access to rural Africa. They also created a learning passport to help displaced and refugee children learn remotely and from different locations. Samsung, another approach to this is what Samsung does, which is a major commitment to sustainability and sustainable materials. So Samsung has prioritized waste and landfill diversion, and they recycle electronics and have a commitment to recycle e-waste as well. And also cleaning up the supply chain by removing the use of conflict minerals, which is really impressive. Examples from Google. So Google has a startup program which trains startups on technical skills and provides mentorship only if the startup is focused on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that's another great example of a program that a company has done to help achieve the goals. And lastly, I'll share some from IBM. So IBM does things such as support the global food supply chain and our goal towards zero hunger by establishing a blockchain called Food Trust, and that helps understand where food comes from, ensure it's distributed equally and it's safe for all. IBM also has a program called PTech, which has over 300 schools around the world, which trains underprivileged students in technical skills. over 6 years. So it's a high school degree plus an apprenticeship. And then they end up getting jobs at tech companies after that. So in the sake of time, I will move to my next chart by just pointing out that this trend towards digital cooperation is enduring, because what statistics show is employees want to work for companies that are ethical and that make a positive impact. Studies show specifically millennials and Gen Z really prefer companies that have a strong corporate social responsibility program and that contribute positively to society and environmental issues. Next chart, please. Lastly, I wanted to share more about design thinking, which is one way to bring together various stakeholders towards a common goal. In this case, this is one way to bring together private and public sector, and this has been done numerous times before. And I'm happy to share in future sessions more detailed, how we've brought together private and public sector to work on big, audacious goals such as the SDG goals. So design thinking brings together people and groups such as civil servants, policymakers, citizens, users, engineers, business owners, academia, all together to, next chart, please, to come up with tangible solutions to our goals. This methodology started in the Stanford Design School over 15 years ago. It's very clear. There's open training on it if you're interested in learning more and applying this to your own institution. And we've actually done it with UN DESA in the past with member states as well to help understand how human-centered design can help advance the sustainable development goals. And next chart, these are just some examples of outcomes that can come out of PPP and design thinking. So more agility, risk-taking mindsets, partnership, etc. And just next slide, just to conclude, time's up. So key questions to address, how to get started is, where do you focus? Government, and the answer to that is government or societal improving business platforms. How do you scale intelligent workflows? And how do you leverage technology, human-machine partnerships? So thank you for the time, and looking forward to the Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Abu Nasra, for your excellent and insightful presentation. I found that myself the PPP is a good solution for solving our challenges. Right now, we are confronting climate change and digital divide. As you mentioned, the global pandemic and skill crisis. All these challenges we are confronting could be resolved and addressed by the PPP, and you present us how to respond to these kinds of challenges. Thank you very much for your great insightful presentation, and I think we time is keep continue flowing, and we have another last but not the least, the speaker, Mr. Professor Zheng Lei of Fudan University from Shanghai. The floor is yours.
Okay.
Professor Zhang, my pronunciation, Zhang and Zhang is
okay.
Confusing you in the beginning of this session. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I will talk about the capacity for digital government transformation, and we are all talking about how important it is to facilitate digital transformation. But actually, we need 4 levels of capacities to make it really happen. And so first is institutional, second is organizational, and then individual and societal level capacity. So I would like to talk about these 4 levels in this presentation. So before we talk about the 4 levels of capacity for digital transformation, we should first look at digital transformation with a holistic approach, which means that digital government transformation is not only about technologies, it's actually about alignment of institutions, organizations, people, technology, data, and resources. So it means that we need some non-technical resources to be involved and to be transformed as well. And then we also need to have a system thinking and integrated approaches to make it really happen. And we can learn from good practices from across the world, because we can also base on homegrown good success stories or practices. And the purpose of digital transformation with a holistic approach is to build a inclusive and collaborative and people-centric government. So that's the overall approach. Now I would like to talk about the capacities at the institutional level. At this level, first we should build up a institutional ecosystem that is friendly to make a transformation happen, which means that we should have laws, regulations, policies, guidelines, and standards related to data and digital transformation. And those laws and regulations should be aligned with the broad national objectives of a country. And especially the goal of digital transformation should be aligned with the national objective. Otherwise, it won't be able to happen. And then we should take into consideration of the needs of vulnerable groups during this whole process of transformation, because those people are what government need to take care of. And then we also need to pay attention to the critical role of regulators, and they should also turn their role from watchdogs, gatekeepers, and arbiters to a facilitator and partners in the process of transformation. And the third, for this institution, we also need to enhance their capacities in terms of analytical capacity, operational capacity, and political capacities at a system, organization, and individual level. So this is a framework that Maria Cassonis presented in his paper. Then we, other than institutional level, we also need to look at organizational level, because only when we have laws, regulations, standards, and then the transformations won't just happen with those laws. We need organization to push forward this agenda, the process. So we need to have appropriate horizontal and vertical workflows before starting an automation process, which means that it's not just a technological problem. If we don't change your organization vertically, horizontally, to make the process, the workflows goes on, and only put some technologies into this organization, it won't work. So before you start automation process, you need to re-engineer your workflow, your working process. And then we also to have some organizational capacity and organizational building, and taking a whole of government approach. For example, you need to have a central coordination agency with budgetary autonomy. You also need to have some chief data officer, chief information officer, data protection officers in place. And you may also organize a councils or advisory groups around the transformation process. And also you need to control the risks and to make the organization agile. And in the end, we need to make those government agencies either horizontally or vertically to be able to work interoperably, and they can work together. And then organization culture is also very important to make the change happen. And third, we need to also build up the individual level. we need to recruiting, retaining, and motivating best digital talents. And we need to develop digital capacities within government and also change people's mindsets to create multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral teams to ensure safe space for innovation and experimentation. And we need to have a plan to develop individual capacities. And that's all about individual levels. And in the end, other than institutional, organizational, and individual level, we also have a big, we need to have a big picture of the whole society. So that's why we also look at the societal level. We need to enhance the capacity of all stakeholders in society, not only those within governments, but also outside governments. And particularly, we need to pay attention to various forms of inequality and the new digital divides to promote digital inclusion, especially pay attention to those vulnerable groups, young people, persons with disabilities, and elderly peoples, and also need to pay attention to gender equality. So that's the overall picture of capacities for pushing forward digital transformation. And they are capacities at 4 levels: institutional, and organizational, individual level, and then the whole society level. Okay, so that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Zheng Lei. I think that it is quite insightful and good presentation, especially I'm very much get good impression about your approach, holistic approach, especially and also the 4-level approach, such as individual, institutional, and the societal level and organizational level. So as you mentioned, as you presented, it is so important to address the challenges, the digital divide. This holistic approach could be quite good answer and solution to our challenges. So we heard all the 5 and 6 speakers the presentation, and right now I'd like to hear about the response from participants. Our Unfog staff already collected several questions through the chat box, and to save for the sake of the time, I'd like to give first the question to Professor Zheng Lei from the question is, government services are half digitized, where we also have to visit the government personnel from time to time. How can it be possible to fully digitize without the need to visit government personnel? So it's a quite question is quite in general. So if you can give us the brief the answer. Professor Zhang, your microphone is.
Oh yes, yes. Okay. Can you repeat the question? Because I can't see it.
Yeah, I'd like to the government services are half digitized, where we also have to visit the government personnel from time to time. And how can it be possible to fully digitize without the need to visit government personnel? That means the asking full digitization. How the methodology or the how to fully digitize the government service.
Okay, so first, I don't think it's necessary to have the full digitalization, because the purpose of digitalization or digital transformation is to serve people. But so for some people, and they may want a digitalized service, so we can transform our services into digital forms. But for some groups, like vulnerable groups, and also like in China, we have some people like elderly people, people living countryside. They actually still like offline service, like in one-stop service center. So for those people, we don't have to fully digitalize services for them. So, but what kind of services should be digitalized, or what kind of service doesn't have to be digitalized? I think the most important thing is that we should be people-centric. We look at the needs of those people and what kind of services are what they want, and what kind of service can better serve them. And then based on that, we to build the digitalization strategy. Like in China, actually in Shanghai, the government also built up lots of facilities and service center to serve those people who don't have access or don't have the capacity to use digitalized devices. And on the other hand, some young people, some educated people, they can use services, online services very well. So government do online and offline services integration. So in Shanghai, they call it integrated online offline service platform to serve the needs of those people. Okay, so that's my question. Again, I want to say that I don't think digitalization is the mean, not the goal. So the goal is to serve people. We don't have to have a fully digitalization in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. I fully agree with you. Your opinion about the digitalization is not our goal or the objective. It's just the mean to solve our same objective, the public service delivery, or the addressing the digital divide, or something like that. So I think thank you very much for the insight. And I'd like to give the next question is going to Mr. Anil Chowdhury. This question comes from the Alonso Bustillos. The question is, how can we overcome? How can we how can we overcome the? Is this? Oh, sorry, the disturbing. The question is, can we expect in the near future the reversal in the wide digital divide between those who are connected and those are not connected? Mr. Chaudhary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. That's a very good question, actually, very thought-provoking one. At one point, we boasted in Bangladesh that we did not have much of a digital divide. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, please.
Okay, sure. I'm actually in a car going to a next meeting because it's ran over a little bit. So hopefully you're able to hear me. So at one point we used to say that we don't have a lot of digital divide in Bangladesh because we set up all these digital centers, 8,000 of them across the country, so that people could come to them. And even if they did not have direct digital access, they would have assisted access. But we were proven completely wrong during the pandemic. So when the pandemic actually shut down all these centers as well, all we had was internet and the national helpline. So we needed to think differently. We saw how the women were at the short end of the stick. They did not have as much digital access as men. The persons with disabilities were the worst sufferers. The small businesses were the worst sufferers. So to answer that question, I would answer it in two ways. So the digital divide that we see today will be bridged in the next few years. But new forms of digital divide will actually come up. As we put, let's say, a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, new types of technologies, new types of divides would come up. I'll give you just one example. So as we put in machine learning in many of our systems, the bias that we're introducing based on the current data that have, because that's how machine learns. The current data actually trains the machine to think in digitally connected. So the digitally unconnected are not providing data into the system. So essentially, we'll create a bias towards the already connected people, thereby marginalizing the currently unconnected. So when they become connected, they will actually see other forms of digital divide coming up with the system. Another example is with blockchain. We said that blockchain will actually be the panacea for solving many social ills. We are seeing many cases where blockchain is actually introducing a form of data that becomes permanent and becomes the single source of truth with false information going into the system. So the false information becomes the truth and then can actually marginalize the, for instance, land records. When land records go into blockchain, wrong land records, bribed by the powerful and the wealthy, then that becomes the source of truth. And the poor and the marginalized become, again, they suffer from the digital divide. So there are many new forms of digital divide that will appear that we have to be very conscious about and have a deliberate focus from a policy making angle. Data privacy, all these new technologies coming up. So all these things that we have to keep in mind. So I will say in conclusion that we will see the bridging of the current divide, but we'll see widening of new divides in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Chaudhary. You are the, I think it's good question and good answer. It's a digital divide is one of the most serious and the most keen issue we are confronting. And today the main theme is also the how to resolve, how to address the digital divide. That means the who is connected, who is not connected issue. Okay, thank you very much. You are the kind and very concise, compact the answer to your questions. And I have next two questions. This is pre-registered question also. Going to Sun Yong-jung, Director General. The question is the Commons Field project applicable to other countries? There's one question, especially the developing countries. Sun Yong-jung, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. I think that's very important question, the applicability of our project. Sorry. My short answer to that is yes, of course, period. And longer one is that Commons Field project can be applied to other countries. You might have neglected buildings or facilities that could be renovated for this use. And you have the people who have the willingness to participate in solving problems in their communities. And the government that is willing to promote social innovation, then you are ready to initiate your own Commons Field project. For your information, an English guidebook of Commons Field will be published in December this year, and we are going to share it through UNPOG website. I hope that we can share our experience in this field. Thank you.
I'm also strongly recommend you please share your practice, Korean practice, Commons Field case with the developing countries. That definitely good response from our developing countries. Thank you very much, Director General Sun Yong-jung. And I'd like to give one. I have one more question. Is going to Ms. Dana Nasra. The question is what kinds of digital transformation partnership is needed for developing countries? The question itself is quite general, but very important and very meaningful. Please.
Sure. So the question was, what type of digital transformation programs are partners?
What kinds of? Let me repeat it. What kinds of digital transformation partnership is needed for developing countries?
Mm-hmm. So that's as you said. That's, yeah, I understood. So that is a big and important question, and I think for developing countries and for developed countries as well, by using the Sustainable Development Goals as our common North Star, as we mentioned. Various types of digital transformation partnerships can form either from the big global technology companies and with local technology partners as well. I think it's really important when developing digital transformation programs as well to keep academia, students, the youth involved. We talked about that, as one of the other speakers also mentioned the importance of involving society. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Instead, country by country, case by case, agency by agency, coming together, co-creating, using design thinking, and then developing your roadmap would be the best, in my opinion, the best way to approach digital transformation. Secondly, I would say that another principle that's important for digital transformation is starting small and scaling fast. So, just one, trying to change just one data point, or just, helping one student, one metric can create a ripple effect if done consistently.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dana Abunasar. You're quite insightful answer to the question. I fully agree with your ideas and opinion about the digital transformation is not just an issue for developing countries. It's also the developed and haves or have-nots is all our challenges and questions. Thank you very much for your kind response to questions. This is all I have the questions collected in advance. So I'd like to end this interactive discussion and Q&A session, and I'd like to deliver my closing comment about today's session 3. Today, in the era of the accelerated pace of digital transformation, we had the very great time to gather opinions and insights from the experts from different fields and countries, engage in depth discussion on very much innovative approaches to provide the digital-based and comprehensive public services and ways to enhance digital capacity throughout the society and bridge the digital divide. I hope the ideas that have been presented and discussed today through our excellent speakers will definitely bring very significant ideas and inspiration to all participants. In particular, as both government and private officials from various countries and sectors have gathered here today. I sincerely hope this symposium will serve as catalyst in promoting public-private cooperation and global partnership in digital sector. I'd like to close this session 3 by expressing my sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers and the participants for your precious time and contribution. Thank you very much for your attention. Before just one technical things, before closing this session, I'd like to invite everyone to fill out the post-evaluation survey. You are seeing the right now the screen, and also participate in the online discussion board on our website. Thank you to our distinguished speakers and the participants for your good time again. And we will see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye. 수고 많으셨습니다.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Tan.